Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the D Hope podcast. We're so glad that you're joining us today. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Ashley Owens. Thank you,
Hi.
Ashley, for joining
Thank
us.
you.
We're super excited that you're here. So, Ashley is a person in long term recovery. She is a wife and the mother of two beautiful children,
Mm-hmm.
ages 13 and 3, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
3. And she is a licensed esthetician. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why her skin is so beautiful.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. It has its perks.
yes. So we just thank you once again for being willing to share your story of how you have uh, gotten into recovery.
hmm
So we'll start by just asking, like, how was your childhood? What happened growing up?
Yeah. So I was lucky. I had a good childhood, but it come with its own issues. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom, I was their only child. He had been married before. So I did have older siblings, but I was the only child in the house. So during my childhood, he was in and out of the picture, and my parents were married 16 years. And during that time, he was a great father when he was sober, but when he was drinking, it was totally unpredictable. So I kind of watched that growing up. And my mom was strong. She was always present when I was growing up, and she was my biggest fan. So throughout my childhood, they were together and we moved around a lot. And when they finally kind of got divorced was when I was in high school. And then he was kind of out of the picture from then on out. But I did see my siblings, throughout that time, and they had their own families. And I ended up getting married young. Like I married my high school sweetheart. So he actually joined the military. So right after we graduated high school, he went to boot camp, and then that kind of took over our life after that for a while. He was in the Marine Corps, and he was in 8 years, and he was in during like the height of the Afghanistan and Iraq war. So during that time is kind of when I went to school, started my career, and was trying to support him, whenever he was home and even when he was abroad. So everything was pretty stable through that. I would live my life, try to keep myself busy. I had a good network of friends and family, when he was deployed. And then he got hurt in Afghanistan in 2011. So that kind of changed things. He wanted to retire. And so we kind of had to change our plans because when he got hurt, he had to get out of the military. So we sat down and we were like, okay, I'm going to really try to focus on my career since you are going to be getting out. And we moved back to our home state where our family was. And I wanted to be the best version of myself. So I had battled my weight on and off my whole life. And so he was getting out of the military. We had our first child. She was 2. And I wanted to be a good example for her. So I decided finally, after years of research, that I was going to have weight loss surgery. And I was 25 when I had it done. Super healthy, like perfect candidate to have it done. Surgery went flawlessly. I started losing weight, but
So
then I
tell
started
me,
having,
tell me how you're like you said you had researched it,
yeah,
researched the weight
um,
loss surgery for years.
yeah,
So take me through that process of
the research.
researching it.
I knew a few people that had had it done
How much did
successfully.
you weigh?
Okay, so my heaviest was when I was pregnant with my first child. I was 270. Surprisingly, I'm really short, so that was tough being that short. And I did try other methods, through my doctor, weight loss programs, tried a few medications, and I would lose some weight but couldn't keep it off. And then after my daughter was born, it was a lot harder to lose it, and so I was researching it, and you had to have a BMI over 40, so body mass index over 40, and you had to have something in your health that would contribute you to be qualified to have it done. And so my blood pressure after I gave birth was high. And so that put me as a candidate to have it done. But my insurance only covered the most invasive surgery, and that was the gastric bypass. So I wasn't able to do the sleeve, and I wasn't able to do like the band because they were no longer doing it. So if I did it, I had to go most invasive. And I really had to think about it because it's not reversible at that point. And I was really young, so it's like, am I willing to pull the trigger and do something that I can't undo, So
Yeah.
I had
Did you
been
have any counseling
I
before
did.
the surgery?
Yeah, I had been working with a nutritionist on and off through the military, through TRICARE, trying to lose, and then my insurance required that I have 3 months of really intensive psychotherapy and counseling, because a lot of people think you're going to have it done and it's just going to drop off and be easy, but most people that battle their weight have a food addiction. And so if you don't get to the root of that, it'll have a transfer of addiction. And so I was
Glad you
like,
brought that up.
yeah. And so that kind of plays into my story also, into recovery. But we worked on that really hardcore, and I never had any issues with drugs or alcohol up to that point. And so I saw a psychotherapist, went to counseling once a week, worked with a nutritionist. So they really tried to cover all of the bases. I had surgery in 2013. And so I felt ready, to have it done. My daughter was 2 at the time. At my heaviest, I was 270. And they made you lose some weight, kind of to show that you could be committed, So they put you on a program. And so I had a requirement to lose 20 pounds in 4 weeks before surgery. And I did. I was able to high protein, low calorie. It was like 1,200 calories a day. And I was like, I'm going to do this, And so it was tough because I had head hunger. And I was like, but I got to stick to it. And so I did. I met the mark. The morning of surgery, I backed out. I was scared to death. And I had never been put to sleep. Had never had surgery, so I was going real big for the first time. Yeah. And I remember just praying about it and just feeling like, okay, if this is supposed to happen, everything has fell into place, I'm not going to back out, because I really was doing it for the right reasons. Not vanity, not any of that. I wanted to be healthy and be a good role model for my daughter, because I had watched my mom hate her body and hate her weight all my childhood. And so I really tried to get it under control because obesity ran in my family, So I was doing it for the right reasons. Had the surgery done. It went well, no issues. Everything went fine. And then a couple of months afterwards, like the weight was coming off. Like the day of surgery, I was 220. So, I'd lost, over the course of all that, all together about 50 pounds. And so I started at 220. The day of surgery, and I was in school and had a daughter, so I didn't have a lot of time to go to the gym. So I was really walking, diet, but it showed you don't have to kill yourself in the gym. Like if you follow your food program, protein first, plenty of water, you can lose it without having to work out a lot. And so the weight just gradually, started coming off. And all of a sudden, though, at about 4 or 5 months post-op, one day I woke up and I couldn't keep anything down. And I was trying to get ready to go to school because I was going to night class, and I could keep nothing down, like not even puree food. And I put off going to the doctor for a couple of days. And finally I couldn't anymore because this lasted for several days. So I went in, got seen, and I had a stricture of my esophagus, which can be common after weight loss surgery, but it was the worst one that they had seen that soon out from surgery. There's really no way to fix it.
What is that?
It's where your scar tissue around where the incisions are is healing, but it like heals almost too fast. So instead of it healing at its normal pace, it just shut off. And like when they went down and looked and did the scope, mine was closed off to the size of a pinhead. Ooh. So like none of my vitamins were getting down. No water was getting down. I was dehydrated, like dangerous point. I had to be put in the hospital. And I was like, so what do we do? Because at that point you've had your whole stomach stapled. So there's not really much they can do. And they're like, well, we're going to have to just go in and do some dilations of that slowly. So we don't risk, tearing anything. I was scared to death because I was so fresh out from surgery. So the first 2 dilations I had, I still could barely get anything down. So my weight started dropping very fast during this point because I couldn't really eat anything other than liquid. My hair started coming out I was really scared. Mm-hmm. And so everything was kind of smooth up until that point. And then during that time, my potassium dropped really low. Like that kind of kicked off me having some complications. And I was in and out of the hospital a few times and having to get IV, and finally they got it dilated back to normal. But this took about 8 weeks of, just going real slow. And I thought, I'm in the clear. Everything's good. I was feeling better. I was able to go back to eating and was working. Life was going by really normally. And then one day I just woke up totally normal. And I was hurting everywhere with no cause. Like I felt like I had been on like a 3-mile hike. Okay, that's the best way I can describe it.
I know you didn't do
like
that.
No, like I don't run and I don't hike, and I mean I hurt like if you hadn't worked out in a while, and if you really went way too hard in the gym. Okay, and I'm thinking, what is wrong? And I'm like, okay, at this point I've lost about 80 pounds, and I'm like, well, my weight's dropping off real fast, so I'm feeling parts of my bones that I ain't felt in a while. I'm excusing it, okay, and so I'm ignoring it, like. I'm fine. I just been in and out of the hospital for months. I'm like, I'm not going back to the doctor. So I put it off and I don't tell anybody for quite a while. And I ignore it for probably about a month until I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I was like coming straight home from work, going to bed. And nothing, there was no cause of why. I was super fatigued, didn't feel like doing anything. My daughter was 4 at the time. So, I mean, I didn't have time to be laying in bed. And finally, my mom was like, okay, like, you're going to have to go figure out what's going on because you're 25. Like, there's no reason. They fixed your problem. You should be feeling better. So I go in thinking it's vitamin something, deficient, not really thinking anything. So they put me through a battery of tests and blood work and everything. And they had me come back like a week later. And the doctor comes in and I don't have anybody there with me. And I'm thinking it's going to be a simple thing. And he says, he's like, your tests come back. He said, you don't have Lyme disease. You don't have, anything like that going on. He said, but you do have fibromyalgia. And I was like, what is that? Because I'd seen like some commercials about fibromyalgia, the medications, but I thought it was something to happen to people way older, and didn't know anything about it. And so he was like, unfortunately, he said, it affects your nerves. He said it can affect a whole battery of issues. He said, and everybody's kind of unique in their own, symptoms of it. He said, and it can change over time. And he said, but there's no cure for it. And I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach because I was like, I've done everything right. And even at my heaviest, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't in pain and I wasn't sick. So I really got mad because I was like, this is not fair. Like, I've lost all this weight, like 100 pounds. I've followed it to a T. I've done everything right. And now I've got an incurable illness at 25. And he's like, we're going to start you on some medications. He said, but, honestly, this is a progressive illness, actually. He said, you're young. He said, so this probably isn't really going to hit the peak of affecting you bad until you start getting closer to 40. And at this point, I feel like garbage every day. So I'm like, it can get worse, and he's like, well, we're going to try to fix, the acute issues. So I was like, okay, and he sends me to a rheumatologist and we start off on the medications, the Lyrica, we start off on gabapentin. And so we start off on that. And at first I see no change. We start off on a low dose. I'm working 2 jobs, trying to live my life. We have to increase it. I'm going back every month. Well, once we kind of get it increased to the point it starts helping, I can't stay awake. Like, it's making me so groggy and I'm having so many side effects that I'm afraid I'm going to fall asleep driving. And I go back and I'm like, this has kind of helped, but we've maxed out the dose at this point, but I can't stay awake. I'm falling asleep at work. So then we change it and it continues, that way for about 2 years. We try Lyrica, Cymbalta, all of the standard, rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia medications. I'm seeing a rheumatologist at the same time. And I feel like I'm bashing my head on the wall because every time I go in, it's the same story. I would hurt in various places every day. It seemed like I couldn't do anything physical, swim, bike, all the things I wanted to do by losing weight. And I'm like really frustrated because at that point they're looking at me like, it's not that bad, and I'm like, it is that bad because I don't feel good. I have no energy. And then my memory, like my brain fog really started getting bad. I was making mistakes at work and I was worried I was going to get fired, and I was like 27 by then. And then I had never even thought of it, didn't even know it was a possibility. But when we kind of reached the end of the standard treatments, because I was even in physical therapy, I had done acupuncture, like I had done all of the things that they could kind of recommend. They finally was like, well, we've tried all this, group of medicines, so we're going to try you on a low dose narcotic. And I was like, what? Like, I'd never taken a narcotic in my life, not even when I gave birth to my daughter. And I mean, they gave me like IV medicine after I had my surgery, but I went home on like Tylenol, that kind of thing. And they gave it to me. Of course, I very low dose knocked me out, so I could only take it when I wasn't on drive and I was going to be at home, but it helped. It was the really one thing that helped. And I finally remember the first time they put me on Percocet after a couple months, the hydros was like, they wasn't that strong. So I said, I need to take a little bit more. And then I feel my pain is not gone, but it's better. And then they wrote me Percocet. And I remember the very first day that I took a Percocet.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can remember where I'm sitting, where I was, who I was with, everything. And I remember feeling like I had 1,000 pounds lifted off my body. And I felt like, where's this been my whole life? And then this little voice in my head said, I'm in trouble. Because I want to feel that way all the time. Because I finally felt for the first time in like 3 years to where I could breathe. Because even though it was the euphoria also, I'm sure, but it numbed that pain that I had been dealing with indescribably, almost consistently for 3 years, because we tried all these other meds and they never really did help. And if they did help a little bit, they just knocked me out to where I was a zombie, and you can't live that way, Right. But I felt like I had energy. I could do my job. I felt like living, but I also felt really good. And I was like, I'm super mom, and I was like, ooh, this is dangerous, but I can't tell anybody that because I actually feel halfway like human again for the first time. But it's like everybody else, that 1 turns into 2, turns into 3 to give you that same pain control. And I honestly was very naive because I was getting these legitimately from a doctor. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I had a legitimate prescription, and I would go in, and if I was like, oh, I'm doing okay, or if I needed more, they would just write more. And I did not even know that I was like dependent on them until one weekend we were going on a camping trip for 4th of July. And I didn't have, like, I was going to run out. I get to this camping trip, and I'm in withdrawal and don't even know that I'm in withdrawal. But I'm like, I am sick. Like, we need to go. Like, I can't get out of the tent. Like,
I'm not staying here.
I cannot be here. Don't talk to me. But I had no idea that I was in withdrawal. I had no idea that by then it literally had me by the neck, because until it was already too late, And I was honest. After that camping trip, I went in and told my doctor, I was like, okay, I can't function without these. Like, and I'm having to take, and I'm running out. And he looked at me, and I'm sobbing in his office, okay, because I feel like the lowest form of human, okay? I'm a mom. This doesn't happen to people like me, this was never going to be me. I'd watched my dad, my addiction ruin my parents' marriage, seen it throughout, and I thought, I'll never do that. And I was that person, and I was like, and I said, help me. Like, what do I do? And he looked me dead in the face, and he wrote me a script for a week's worth. And he said, I'm not going to see you anymore, and sent me out the door. And I sat in the car for over an hour, literally not knowing what to do, because I was like, I felt ashamed. Like, I didn't feel like I could tell anybody. I didn't even want to tell my husband how bad it was, because I was hiding how bad I felt from him. We'd been married. We were high school sweethearts, and he knew me, and I was like, this isn't supposed to happen to me, because I knew in my mind, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do if I can't get my prescription, and my brain was telling me all these things that I knew morally was not who I was. I was panicking, and I was like, I don't know what to do. So I start trying to get in with another doctor. Well, my doctor.
Did you feel like your being honest with him was like him just being like, nope, I'm not.
I don't want to deal with this.
I don't want to deal with this. Instead of maybe.
Yeah. I felt like
send you to somebody to help you with the fact that you felt dependent on it.
Yeah.
I think at that point, the doctor probably felt it's more of a liability.
Yeah,
not saying
that's
that
how
it's
I
right, but it's just
Right,
like
yeah.
it's easier. It's easier to say, "Look, I can't see you anymore,"
and honestly,
and I don't want this.
That's the truth, because this had been my primary doctor way before this happened. He was the doctor that had ended up diagnosing me with fibromyalgia. He was the doctor that I saw to get my referral to get my gastric bypass.
Oh, really?
So he was my doctor for years previous to this. So he'd known me, and I felt so betrayed, because it's like, you know, he treated me like I was scum of the earth. And
When
I
you
mean,
tell
he
him the
knew
truth.
what led up to that, you know, and I felt like I needed to tell him, but I felt like he turned his back on me when I did, you know, and really I had no idea what to do, where to turn. And, you know, when I tried to go and get another doctor, because thankfully I had insurance, he'd red flag me in the computer. So like, and everybody's like, nope. Like, so then it goes from being a legitimate situation to being, I cannot get this prescription. And so, but that does not matter, because I am an addict at this point. I can't admit that to myself. I'm just physically dependent on this meds. But now it's went from I'm legitimately getting these for a legitimate illness to I've got to have these to function. Mm-hmm. And I can't get anybody to write them for me. And they just turn me out to my own devices. And so I literally, probably one of the darkest times of my life, because I'm thinking, I mean, my body is telling me, you've got to have this. And so then it goes, I mean, I don't know where or how to go about getting this, you know, these pills. Like, I was like, I got them from the pharmacy, you know, every month. So then it really got dark, because then I started finding myself having to associate with people that I would never associate with. You know, my husband would call, where are you at? Oh, I had to stay late at work. You know, because other people in my family have been addicts. Mm-hmm. I knew who they were, and I knew they knew people. So I was lying. I was lying to myself. I was lying to my job. I was lying to my husband. But it didn't matter, because I was making excuses for it in my head. You know, not only was I sick and withdrawal, the second I opened my eyes every morning, I was in so much pain that it overtook every ability to make a rational decision. Mm-hmm. You know, the best way I can describe it, it was like my joints were on fire. And the second I opened my eyes, and I was like, I was so badly hooked by that point that, I mean, the fact that they could just turn me away, I mean, I was already taking so many a day that it was like, I was in a bad way. And I mean, I was totally lost. And so then I got involved with all these, you know, sketchy people. Mm-hmm. And I'm taking more and more, and then I'm having to get them not the legitimate way. So then money's disappearing, you know. And I was able to make excuses for that, because my job at the time didn't do direct deposit. So I got my check from work. So my husband didn't know. I mean, it didn't go into the bank. So I went and got it cashed, was living this whole double life, you know, and making it okay in my mind. I got to have these. I'm sick. You know, I have an illness. It's okay. I have pain. Well, I did have pain, but it had turned into something that was way beyond, you know, coping with pain. And the more I took and the longer I was on them, the more it took to keep me from just being so sick. And I mean, my tolerance was so high. And that was right when everything was kind of kicking off with the opiate epidemic. So they were getting harder to find. And then when you could find them, they were so expensive. And, you know, it's like you didn't know day to day if you were going to be going to work or if you were going to have to call in. So I was like, this went on for, I was probably about 2 years. And the supply was really... That
went on for 2 years?
Yeah, this went on for 2 years. Like going to work day to day, not knowing what I was going to do, where...
I don't know
how I didn't get fired.
I don't know how you handled that for 2 years.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, thankfully...
That's a long time to be in active addiction.
Well, altogether,
From my experience.
I was in active addiction for 5 years. But for a while of that, I was getting them legitimately, but I was using too many, doing all that. The street issues and the, you know, buying and all that lasted for about 2 years. And the way that was able to work was I'd been on my job for a long time. My boss trusted me. Okay. My husband, I mean, would give me his very last dime. So he enabled me. My mom enabled me. So, I mean, I had all these people around me that loved me, that didn't want to see me sick. And I could manipulate them. And I did, you know, I just had a way to manipulate them. And I knew that. So by that point, it was, I know I got to have what I need. And I know they're going to give me money if I act crazy enough.
If I act crazy enough. That's a crazy scenario.
Yeah. So, I mean, my husband, and I mean, he would be like, our electric bill is due tomorrow. I didn't care. Okay. Like, I knew I would worry about that then. Okay. I was worried about it right now.
I'll worry about that tomorrow.
Now. And I'm like, and he's like, Ashley, like, we've got to have groceries. And I was like, you can worry about that. I need $50, you know? And so literally, I mean, he tried his best to tell me no, but I mean, I would get in the car and I tried to run over him one day. Like, he was like, this woman is insane. And I'm sure from his perspective, he's like, who are you? Because he met me when I was 6 years old. And he was like, this is not my wife. And I don't know what to do. But I would tell him, you don't like it, leave. Like, I didn't care. Okay. And by then it had spiraled so bad that anybody that tried to get in the way of me doing what I needed to do, I just did not care if they hated my guts, if we had lights or food or not. You know, I wouldn't even put gas in my car. Like, I would be trying to drive to find something with no gas. And probably the lowest point after this going on for like 2 years was the day they repossessed my car from work. Like, I'm in a service with a client in withdrawal, sweating profusely, okay, shaking, trying not to throw up on this client. And I come out and they're like standing in the hall outside my treatment room. And they're like, there's somebody at the desk for you. So I go up front, I'm sweating through my shirt. And this guy who's driving this tow truck is there to repossess my vehicle. And I was like, and everybody was looking at me and I was like, oh yeah, it's been tore up. It ain't been running right. And I am so full of it. Okay. And they just hauled my car off. And I was like, I had to call my husband and say they took my car. And I knew they were going to. I was dodging them. Okay. I wasn't paying that car payment. Are you kidding? I wasn't paying anything. My phone was getting shut off. And I mean, I was making so many excuses, did not care.
Like, I don't care. You're going to have to come find me.
I'll walk there. Okay. And they did. I mean, it's embarrassing now, but I mean, they had to hunt me down. And I mean, but that kind of kicked it off. And then a few months later, they repossessed his truck outside of our apartment. We kept getting evicted, kept having to move. And like, my daughter's like 5 at the time when all this is happening. So, I mean, she is young enough to where she doesn't really realize how bad this is. Okay. And so after we got evicted, his car got taken, my car got taken. Like, I reached the end of the money flow. Okay. And I finally got to where I could not function and hold down my job. And after 5 years, I got fired. And so that was a really low point for me because I loved my job. I went to work for my instructor, my school instructor. So she was my friend and she knew that something was going on. Okay. And she,
so what happened the day that you, did they ask you anything like leading up to, like, did they try
to I'd been in for some evaluations and I was calling in, coming in late, going on my lunch, coming back from lunch late, doing all these things that was very out of character. And she'd known me long enough to know that was not like me. You know, I took my job very serious, but my performance really started to suffer a lot. And I would just leave on my lunch and be gone and be like, yeah, I'm out of gas or I'm in traffic. And they know I'm not. Okay. Women leaves for 2 hours on their lunch and they love me and they knew something was up. So they put up with it and they overlooked it for a long time until eventually they couldn't anymore because I was in a management position. I was one of the only people that had a key to the building. And there was one day that I was supposed to open and it was a Sunday. So we opened at noon and I was late getting there. And there was a line of customers out the door. Everybody, all the other estheticians were there, like waiting to go in. And I had the responsibility to open. And I got there like 30 minutes late, cost them a ton of money, they had to give services away. And literally my boss set me down and she was like, we need to have a meeting. And so that day that we were going to meet, I was in the ER trying to score because I was sick. I called into work. I'm supposed to meet with her about my job and can't even care. Okay. So I'm in the ER and they were like, I knew they were going to fire me.
That meeting's gotta wait.
I was like, I'm not going to make it to that meeting. And I knew what it was. Like, she had talked to me and she's like, is everything okay? Like, you know, and she knew everything wasn't okay, but I was making all kinds of excuses. Yeah, they've changed my medicine. I'm going through a lot. And she was like, I'm sure she thought, you're so full of it, Ashley. Like, you know, but she was making excuses for me because she didn't want it to be real. and
she knew you as a person.
She knew me as a person.
Like professionally, she could not keep you. She couldn't.
I was costing her money at that point. And I mean, we'd known each other long enough before, and she made me a part of her business, and that meant a lot to me. But then it got to the point where I just didn't care, and she had a liability by having me there, and I knew that, and I was like, but she loves me, and we're bonded, and she's not going to fire me. Well, it came to a point, being on this side of it, she had to fire me because I wasn't dependable. Like they didn't know if I was going to show up or not. And so the day that she was going to meet with me, I called in. I'm in the ER, and I'm thinking, well, I'm gonna have a doctor's excuse, so they can't fire me. Okay. So literally, my manager, the supervisor, gets on the phone, and she's like, Ashley, there's been a lot going on, and this is the firing conversation. And I was like, I quit. And she's like, what? You can't I said, I'm not going to let them fire me. And my mom's like, nuts.
Nania, she's like, she's lost her mind.
She's like, she's literally lost it. And I was like, no, I've worked there for 5 years. Like, I'm going through a difficult time. I'm not going to let them fire me. So I quit. And they're like, just come in and talk to us. I'm like, no. They ended up still taking me to dinner the next week. Gave me gift cards, thanking me for working. They didn't want me to leave that way, but I was so mad and so not in my right mind that I was like, they don't deserve me. And I was like, I'm very embarrassed about how that ended. Okay.
They don't deserve my services.
I'm too good for them. And he took me to dinner after I acted so crazy. But because I knew a lot of people, I was able to get another job pretty quick. I made connections, and from working there. So I had a friend who was working somewhere else in the same town, and she's like, I'm leaving to go, work somewhere. They need somebody to replace me. So she was gone like a week. So she trained me and was out the door. So she didn't really know what was going on with me because we hadn't seen each other in a while. So I start working, and immediately same thing starts happening. I'm leaving, not showing up. I'm in my 90-day probationary period. Does not even matter. Okay. And I know I just lost this job of 5 years. Well, by this point, everything kind of starts coming to a head because I've been dealing with this for 5 years, and the collateral damage is really apparent. We got evicted, had to be out of our house, didn't know where we were going to go, had both vehicles.
Hold on just a second. So how is Travis
dealing with all this?
Reacting? Because at this point, he knows that you're on the loony bin. Yeah, at this point.
I've been. And so for a while, he's the kind of person.
He's very laid back.
He's very laid back. Okay. And he knew that this started from a place of me being sick, so he made excuses for it. I mean, as any husband would. My wife is sick. She's in pain, which he had never dealt with addiction himself, or anybody close to him. And he just could not bring himself to say, my wife has a problem. Okay. My wife is an addict. And I was showing all kinds of typical addict behavior, but he could not admit it to himself, and we got married very young. We've been married how long? 13 years at this point. So he was in it. He stuck with me when other people would have hit the door. Okay. But because of that, I knew I could manipulate him, because he loved me and he couldn't let his heart go there. And so he rode with it, made excuses for it. He lived with me in a shoebox. He would start all over, get another
car. When y'all were getting evicted, was he like, Ashley, where's the money?
He knew where the money was. He would hand me money because I would act crazy if he didn't. He was not going to live a good life.
Because you were telling him what it was for.
Yeah, he knew what it was for.
He knew what it was for.
I would be talking, I can't go to work. I can't get out of bed, if I can't, if I don't have it.
Yeah, he knew that he just to avoid that fight. It was just give her the money.
Give her the money. It out. So, he was
well, let me ask you this, Ashley, going just backtracking a little bit to where when he got hurt.
Yeah.
Did he have a long term of where he had to recover and then deciding to?
His was a little bit unique because he got hurt on his 4th deployment. He was in Afghanistan, and he was on a deployment when this happened. He was on a 9-month deployment in Afghanistan, and he just got there. So he'd only been in country for about 5 or 6 weeks. And he was a machine gunner, and he was riding the top of a Humvee, and their Humvee ran over an IED. And thankfully he wasn't ejected from the vehicle, but half of his body was inside and outside because he was on that gun that's on the top. And so he got tousled around really bad. And so he was like hanging upside down inside the Humvee. Well, they take him in and he sees the corpsman because they're in country. So they don't have like emergency facilities. So they can only kind of diagnose him, to the best of their ability there. But he walked away from it. They put him on light duty for a couple of days and they just started this deployment. So, I mean, once he was able to shake off, the adrenaline dump and see nothing was broken, he went right back to work. So he was there 9 months and I was actually pregnant with our daughter during this time. So he stayed and it was a very difficult, very dangerous deployment. He's very lucky he came home from that deployment. And so once he got back to the States, he had to go in and do like the full physical workup once they get back. And so they always do that when they come back from a deployment. And so they did a CAT scan, an MRI, did some x-rays. And at that point we go in and we're at the Naval Hospital on Camp Lejeune. And then we really find out the magnitude of how bad he's hurt. And this is like 9-10 months later. Mm-hmm. And in the explosion, because half of his body was outside the vehicle, when they ran over the bomb, it started under his feet and it was 80 pounds of explosives. So it literally separated his vertebrae and his spine. So they separated from the force, slammed back on top of each other, and it rattled his brain in his head like a scrambled egg. So he had a whole host of back issues, and he also had a traumatic brain injury and post-concussion syndrome. And so he's in his early 20s, at the time, and he feels fine by then. I mean, he's back, he's like, I got through the whole deployment. I feel great. And they're like, well, these back issues are going to end your career. They're like, we can't deploy you anymore. And he was a machine gunner. He'd been infantry. So at that point, they couldn't use him. He was hurt. And so he went from wanting to retire and do 20 years to having to finish out his enlistment. And they put him on light duty. And they were like, these issues with your brain is what really has us concerned, because these are the type of issues that are going to be lingering and really start to affect your life down the road. You feel fine right now, but it affects like the frontal, cortex, like the decision making, short-term memory, attitude, all of those kind of things. And he was young, he felt fine. And then he had like a year and a half left of that enlistment. So we were like, okay, you're going to get out. You don't want to, but they're like, we're done with you, like, thanks, have a nice life. And so he thought, okay, I'm going to get out and I'm going to be able to be a cop or use some of these skills, And so I was supportive of him. I would have been supportive if he wanted to stay or get out. And he did 2 enlistments all together and, had been everywhere all around the world. And I was okay with him wanting to retire. But then he was like, now what? Like, who am I outside of being a Marine? So I was like, I can go to work, I can help, till we figure out what you're going to do. Well, when he got out, he could not be a cop. He could not work security because you have to be able to pass a physical. And so then I saw him dealing with all these things they did not tell him was going to happen. They're like, you'll be able to get any job you want. You're in the military. Well, you can't if all you've done is deploy. So when he got out, he didn't know what he was going to do, and for a while it was tough. But his injuries really didn't start affecting him until he was out. Because at that point, he did not want to file for VA disability. It's almost like a weakness if they do, that's admitting you're hurt. That's admitting you're weak, And I was like, this isn't really affecting you right now, but, we have a kid. And they told him it would get worse, and I said, I'm here for you, like, we're in this together. But you need to think about down the road because we do have a child. And if you don't go, you're hurt because of what you did for the country, and it may not be that bad right now, but they're telling you, down the road, your short-term memory, you're going to have early onset Alzheimer's, this is going to affect your life. And if you don't file for those benefits, if it gets to where you can't work, I have to be, that's going to fall on me. So finally he was convinced to get his VA, benefits. And he started off just at 20%, and he worked and he didn't complain and everything was fine. So I had been there for him. He had been, we'd been apart more than we've been together during those years that he was gone. He was deploying all the time. And I had, stayed faithful, loyal, followed him all over, supported him through everything. So I think he felt obligated to do the same thing for me. And that also, I told him, I said, I've been there for you. I gave birth to our child with you on the other side of the world. So, I mean, he really, had always been in his corner as his biggest cheerleader, and when he came back and he was hurt and his family didn't understand him and he had PTSD and they thought he was crazy, I didn't, and I stuck with him. And I think because of that, he thought, this is awful, and this is a whole lot that I don't know what to do with, but I've got to support her, and he made excuses for it because his family finally, once we couldn't kind of hide it anymore, his mom was like, dude, like, what is going on? Why are y'all moving all the time? Never have any money. And it was stressing him out. He would get an extra job to try to make up for my money that I was spending. I'd take his whole check. And, I know I pushed him to the breaking point. Other people would have hit the door and I just couldn't care. I expected him to do it and I would literally lose my mind if he didn't. Okay. And he did not want to deal with that. I would say, you don't love me. I don't care if you're here or not. If you don't like it, hit the door. And I mean, we have a child together. So, I mean, he is stuck with this whether he likes it or not, and I knew how to hit him where it hurt. And it was like, I didn't care, at the time, because by that point it was so far out of control. And like my family tried to get in on a few times, like most families, at this point, like, 4 or 5 years into this, tried to intervene, tried to be like, Ashley, like, we know you're in there somewhere. This is not you. Okay. You. We want to help you. And instead of embracing that, I would get so offended. Okay. And I would be like, I know you all aren't trying to do some intervention on me right now. Okay. And I would turn furniture over and I would go off and they would be like, whoa, and they were like, what are we supposed to do?
Let's say how tall you are.
I'm 4'10". So okay. I'm 4'100 pounds.
So little.
I'm like a tornado. Okay. And
so like, you're feisty anyway.
And I got some spunk and they just did not know, like, how do you respond to that? Okay. Like, and looking back, I'm like, wow, I was crazy. And my daughter would be sitting there and everything. And I would just be like a lunatic. And they were trying to help me, but I thought, no, you're ganging up on me. Okay. Like, no, I'm not like them people on TV. Okay. Like, and I just was crazy.
Yeah.
And they're like, seriously, I went running outside one time when they tried to set me down and I grabbed my keys and I'm trying to back out and they're like surrounding the car. Okay. And I went through the grass, jumped the curb, like I'm out of here. Okay. And I wouldn't come home, wouldn't answer my phone. Yeah. Travis would be like, I'm going to report the car stolen. I'm like, fine, I'll leave it sitting on the side of the road. I don't care. Come get this hunk of junk. Like, literally it got to that level. And then by the time that happened, and at this point, Travis and me we're moving every couple of months. He's lost everything. He ain't got 2 nickels to rub together. And so literally the last time I was barely showing up to work and I had found a doctor who really wasn't a legitimate doctor. Okay. It was a pain clinic. I went in for my first appointment. Well, they write you a script, but they want you to send in an x-ray. Okay. And so I'd been trying to hop around and find somebody to write me a prescription because I could not afford to keep this habit up. Okay. Like I needed something to supplement the amount of money that I was spending and you couldn't find them anymore. They were becoming non-existent. And so I went in for my first appointment. Well, they would write you a script and have you come back a month later after they got your x-ray. I knew that x-ray was not going to show what was wrong with me. Okay. I didn't have a back injury. I have fibromyalgia. It doesn't show up on x-ray. Right. So I know I'm going to get 1 month prescription and get cut off. So I show up at home and my husband has this idea that he's going to take my pills and hold them. Okay. And give them to me like I'm a child. All right. And lock them up. And I come home and I tell him, yeah, it went okay, blah, blah, blah. I know I'm so full of crap. Like he locks them up and he's going to give them to me. Well, that night he gives me, I was like 3 a day. Are you kidding me? I was like, no way. Okay. So he locks them up. The next morning I get up to go to work before he does. I get into the cabinet. Mm-hmm. I'm in there like crawling on the floor, sneak into the cabinet, unlock it, take them out. He gets up for work and counts them.
Mm-hmm.
And all heck breaks loose in our apartment. Okay. He comes through and throws the bottle at the wall. And that was the day that it really blew up at our house. It had been coming to a head. Okay. And he literally shut me in my daughter's room. Okay, because he's like, you took those pills out of the cabinet. And I was like, no, I didn't. And he's like, yes, you did. Okay. I was like, I don't know what you did with it, but it wasn't me. And he was like, you were so full of it. Okay. I'm thinking the law is going to get called because it's 6 a.m. and we're taking the roof off this apartment. Okay. He has broken a picture on the wall. Glasses went everywhere. I am telling him, you're not my father. I'm going to do what I want to do. You're going to get out of my face right now, or you're going to wish you had. Okay. So he takes my medicine and goes to work. All right. And I call in and I'm like, I'm done. He's out. He can get his crap. I've decided that I am going to file a restraining order on him. All right. That's going to solve everything. So he's calling me. He's on his job. And I said, if you don't bring me my medicine right now, this is going to be the worst day of your life. Okay. So you aren't going to believe what's going to happen next. Okay.
I will burn this house to the ground.
Oh my God. So I convinced him to let me come and pick up my medicine. Okay. And then he's apologizing because he's calmed down. Okay. I'm not calm at all. I say all the right things, go to his work, meet him in the parking lot, pick him up, go home, go to the courthouse and file an emergency restraining order. Okay. For me and our 7-year-old daughter. Okay.
So what did you tell them? Like,
I didn't tell them anything. They served him. Okay. So I can go pick up the medicine at his job. Bye. Love you. Go to the courthouse and file a restraining order. Yes, ma'am. I said, I buttered him up, said all the right things, went and got my pills.
You said, you'll never do this again.
No, I was done. All right. And my mom's just along for the ride. She's in the car and she was like, what is going on? And I'm like, I'm done. Nobody, I'm on the ledge. Nobody is going to talk me out of this. Okay. He's calling me.
You've already made up your mind.
Oh, yeah, I'm there. Okay. And my mom is like, what? Because she's known me and my husband since he was a little boy. And she's watching this train wreck happen. Okay. And she's like, what? And so literally I go file an emergency restraining order and they serve him. He don't even know until they serve him. So literally
you tell the police that
I said
he held your medicine or?
Oh yeah. I said he stole my medicine because he's like, I'm going to call the cops, and they don't deal with that kind of thing. They're like, that is not our deal. Okay. Don't call us about medicine, which he found out when he called to try to rat me out to the cops. Okay. Then he called the doctor's office and told them she's overtaken. I'm like, well, they're only going to write me a month anyway. Whatever, whatever he was trying to do I had an excuse for. I was like, do whatever. I don't care. So I talked him in to calming down and giving me the medicine to get what I wanted. I met him there. He thought everything's cool. It ain't cool. I'll leave there and go to the courthouse. I'm like, I'm out of here. You're out of my house. Forget you. Like, they serve him, and he's like, totally, I'm sure, out of the clear blue. Okay. And he's like, what is going on? He has to come to the house, get his stuff. I can't be there. Our daughter can't be there. It's really gotten serious. They're there with him, watching him, because I went and told him he took my medicine. I said he weighs 260 pounds. He is a military veteran. Okay. He is literally mixed martial arts certified black belt. Okay. He's got PTSD. So, I mean, everything on paper looks like, whoa, like we better go in deep with this guy because he's crazy. And they did. Like 6
because they're thinking he's the addict.
He's the problem, okay? Like this dude is big and he's unstable. Is probably what they were thinking.
She was making him look like he was the
like
crazy.
And
I found out real quick that when you file any restraining order until you go to court, they have to take your word for it because when whatever you write down, if they don't grant you that emergency restraining order and something happens, it's going to be on somebody. So you do have to go to court within like 14 days, but they'll give you an emergency one and they have to stay away from you. Like if they don't grant it,
I know they go back to jail.
Yeah. So like the next week, he can't come back to the house. He goes to his mom's and literally they're like, you're going to go to court next week. I've got our daughter. Well, she's not old enough to know what's going on. All she knew is she went to school and dad was there and she come home and he's not. Okay. And I told her, I said, Kira, I'm trying to talk to her and say, we both love you, but mommy and daddy are going through some stuff. This doesn't have anything to do with you. At this point, me and him can't even be civil with each other. It had blew up so bad that morning that I was like, he ain't coming back here. Nothing. And so when we go to court,
but it was because he tried to keep your pills.
He kept my pills.
That was the point.
He backed me into the bedroom and would not let me out. Okay, he took my keys. And I was like, you're a big guy and you're not going to intimidate me. And I don't care how crazy I'm acting. Okay. And so he'd never done that before. So when he threw the bottle and broke the picture on the wall, you don't act that way at my house, no matter how crazy I'm acting. Okay. And I'm like, nope. And I'm like, that was it. Like I had it. So I was excusing everything I was doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So by the time we got to court, we'd had no contact with each other. We get to court. He looks at me like, he looks like he is about to pass out, okay? And I come in there, and I don't even care that I'm even in court, okay? Like, I'm just done. And so, literally, we go before the judge. The judge sees him, sees me. This dude is huge. He's a veteran who's, on VA disability, and they told him they had to take his handgun carry permit. And that judge told him, they said,
did?
Oh, yeah. They said, because literally he's like, what do you want, Miss Owens? Like, y'all been married almost 14 years. You have a daughter. I said, he can't be involved with my daughter without being involved with me. Because, I had custody over her at that point. And I said, he needs to go through anger management. I said, because I don't want him around me or my daughter until he does. So it was required that he go to anger management. Well, I was smart because if you had legal aid, if you were the first one to call, they would represent you. Okay. So they represented me. If he fought it, he was going to have to get a lawyer. Okay. He didn't have the money to get a lawyer. I'd spent all his money. I knew that. So like I had the upper hand because I'm the woman. I'm a lot smaller on paper. He's got issues. I'd never been pulled over. I'd never popped on a drug test. I always had with me what I had a prescription for. So he's like, I might call him. Like, they pull me over, they're not going to find me with nothing. I said, I'm going to tell you right now, okay? I said, so go ahead. Well, they did. He called. CPS showed up on my job. CPS showed up at my daughter's school. Well, what does she say? My mommy takes care of me. I'd always somehow managed to provide a roof for her and take care of her. Mm-hmm. How, I don't know. But thank God I was able to keep it together enough to where she wasn't totally impacted to where she didn't have that stability. Yeah. So, and I'm so grateful for that because even though I know it did fall apart beyond what I would have ever imagined it to, she wasn't affected beyond that, and she was young enough to where she doesn't remember a lot of that. But he couldn't say that I wasn't a good mom because I had food. I had everything for her. She had clothes and she told him, I want to be with my mom, and so he tried, but that just made me even more mad because when I found out he called CPS, that was like the one thing I really couldn't get past. Mm-hmm. is that because for all he knew, they could have took her. They could have took her. They wouldn't have gave her to him because he's got a restraining order. Mm-hmm. And he's he's got PTSD, but his mom had convinced him to call. And like she had a felony, so they wasn't going to give her to him. She could have wound up in the system. And I was like so angry that he was so mad at me that he took that chance. That's the one thing I really had a hard time working through, because even though I'd done all this, I was like, that was it. That was like the final straw. I was like, I am the mother of this child, and you put her in jeopardy, knowing that she has food, clothes, a house, everything, just because you're mad. You want to hit me where it hurts. Mm-hmm. He knew the one way to get to me was her. Mm-hmm. And he went there. And like when everything was done, they were like, well, if you're going to get custody, you're going to have to get a lawyer. Okay. And so he gets this lawyer. We filed the restraining order. We're separated at this point. I'm living in a hotel. Okay. Because I got evicted. After we weren't in contact, he took me off our bank. So I had no access to money. Okay. So it really was getting desperate because we had a joint account, so he's like, okay, and I went to the bank that morning that he was getting paid and could not get any money. And he knew. He's like, I'm going to cut the head off the snake. Watch this. And so I was like, oh man, I'm in trouble. And so literally we were separated and in this restraining order for 5 weeks. And when he got this lawyer, he was having to pay her all this money. She was trying to work for him so he could see his daughter, and I get that. But she said, you're going to have to be driving the bus, not riding it. He said, if you want to have your child, you're going to have to file for divorce. He said, because if you don't, she will. And you need to file before she does. So that's when Travis really had to make some hard choices and be like, is this the end of my marriage? Because I had not filed for divorce at this point. We were separated and things were really bad, but I had not filed. And so he met the lawyer in this parking lot and she's like, you need to let me know by in the morning. Like, we need to get ahead of this before she files, because then she's going to be driving the bus. And she's like, she could take your daughter, but he loved me. He didn't want to give up on me. And his whole family is saying she's a junkie. Forget her. Like, everybody is telling him that. And like, we hadn't spoken a word to each other in 5 weeks. And my stepdad at the time, actually, they worked at the same place. And my stepdad overheard Travis in the break room talking to another guy saying he was going to show up at my job because he needed to talk to me and find out, is this over before I file for divorce? And he couldn't bring himself to do it. He couldn't do it. And I knew if he showed up to my job, he was going to jail. I mean, he was going to jail for a year. They told him, do not write, do not call, do not show up here. Okay, we will arrest you. And he knew that. And I had told my work, if he shows up here, he ain't supposed to be here. Well, he was going to show up on a day I was actually off, but he wasn't thinking about that. It was on a Tuesday and I didn't work on Tuesdays. And thank goodness my stepdad overheard him talking. He was going by my work. So I used my mom's phone and called my stepdad and I said, put Travis on the phone. He puts him on the phone and he says to me when he answers the phone, hey, babe. And I was like, Travis, what are you doing? And he's like, what? I said, if you go by my job, what are you doing? I said, are you wanting to go to jail? They told you to stay away, no contact. And he was like, I have to talk to you. He said, my lawyer is trying to, give me advice on what to do. He said, and she's telling me to file for divorce, but I can't bring myself to do it because you haven't filed. And I was like, I had no idea what to tell him because at this point, internally and emotionally, I was done. I was over it. I was like, we can't get past this. I cannot stay with him. He doesn't understand me. And I had literally been like, we're done after all these years together. And I was like, this dude is either absolutely insane, okay, or he really does love me, and I didn't know, honestly, if I could get past it. I was so angry, and I was still using at the time. But, I was like, I don't know if I can forgive him, when he got our kid involved. Because in the beginning, it was just me and him. But when he called CPS and told them that I was an unfit mom, I was like, I don't know if I can stay with you. I don't know if I can really stay with you and work through this or even try, And he came to the hotel that I was staying at that night like a crazy person. I could have been setting him up, but he showed up anyway. And he's talking to me and he's bawling his eyes out. And I'm just so far gone that I'm just numb. I don't even cry. And he's like, what's going to happen with us? And I'm like, I don't know. I said, but what I do know is you can't fix me no matter how bad you want to. And I said, if I'm even open to trying to make this work, you have to tell me right now, can you stay with me if I never get clean? Because if not, then you need to get in the car and leave. I said, because I can't promise you that. And I said, you don't want to admit that I'm an addict. I am. I said, and I'm going to be, whether I get clean or not, I'm going to be dealing with this for the rest of my life. And if you don't want to deal with that, then you need to go. I said, because you have to sign up for this no matter how this goes. And I really think he thought she's going to die, because he said, I love you. I don't want to give up on you. I said, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. And I was like, okay. And I was still I was still taking his money. We're trying to kind of make our marriage get back on track and see if we can make this work. And really at the time, the only reason I did is because of our daughter. I was like, I need to be able to look her in the face and say, I tried, So
what happened with the cake after,
so at the time,
after that?
Yeah, it was complicated in the beginning because we're supposed to be having no contact. Okay. But you can't really work through anything without. So he's living with his mom, and they were living like 45 minutes away. And he had to borrow a car from a friend because, I mean, I'd taken everything this man had. Okay. Well, I'm living in a motel. And so we couldn't get a court date for like 3 months to go back in front of the judge. Wow. And I was going to have to drop the restraining order. So I told my mom, like, it's going to be after the first year before, because it was the holidays. It was like November, December, and then we were going to go back in after the first year. And I was going to go back before him and have to tell him, you know, I want it to be dissolved and, you know, get it off the table, hoping that they would, you know, because I went in there making him seem like he was crazy, you know. And I was like, but every time he called me, every time we were together, we took a chance on him going to jail. Because we're trying to talk, we're trying to kind of see if we have any chance to make it work. And we do have this child together. And I thought, man, this guy has stuck with me. Anybody else would have ran for the hills, because I could have been setting him up for all he knew. I mean, every time he came to see me, I could have called the cops and had him waiting, you know. But his commitment those months to taking that kind of chance of not knowing what I was going to do, and me totally having the control over the situation, showed me that he, even though he hurt me and betrayed me, I betrayed him too. And, you know, nobody else is going to love me like that. Like, he wants to love me no matter what. And so those months we were seeing each other, taking a huge chance. We really couldn't even go out in public, because if we got pulled over by the cops, he would have been hauled off to jail for a year. So we really just talked, tried to work through the anger, you know, of how mad I was at him. Like, he should have been mad at me. I was super mad at him, because I was like, you don't threaten me with my child, okay? Like, I would just look at him and think, you could have had her taken away forever, you know. And I was so offended by that, even though I was acting totally out of my mind, you know. And he had every right as a dad. I mean, he should have done that, you know, but I couldn't look at it that way at the time. And we moved in with my mom and my stepdad at the time, which was a disaster, because him and my stepdad didn't get along. And literally, my stepdad threatened to call the cops on him one night, like, didn't want him to be there. And we're living in this 2-bedroom apartment over a barn. Like, we're at the bottom of the barrel. Okay. We have no heat. We have no money for Christmas. We're opening the oven to get heat. I mean, we've hit the wall. Okay. And I remember it was the week after Christmas. My mom was on pills, so me and her are both sick. And Kira's home from school, my daughter, and she's sick with strep throat. So she's home. We have no heat in the house. And I'm on one couch and my mom's on the other. And I'm like, this is about as bad as it gets. Okay. This is about as low as I could imagine being, because I could not even force myself to get off the couch and make that child breakfast. I was so sick, and neither could my mom. And I'm like, I'm going to die. Like, I hope I do, if this is the way the rest of my life is going to be, if this is how bad I'm going to feel. Because at that point, I was never going to have enough money to be able to get well. Like, everything was just unattainable, and everything had spiraled to the point where I never had thought about using the needle, had never thought about using heroin, but I had reached the end of the road on pills. And I was like, I'm either going to make a choice that I'm going to sell my soul to the devil and go down that road, because that's the only other option, or I'm going to attempt to try to get help. And I didn't know very much about, you know, other forms of recovery, because I had tried to stop many times on my own. And of course, you know, I'd last a couple of days, be in withdrawal, but then the pain would get so bad that I could not stand it. I felt like I was coming out of my skin. My body was on fire. So that's why I would not just the withdrawal, the pain would be so unbelievable. And I was like, I can't function with this level of pain. And so I really didn't ever see my life without pills, ever. Like, I thought, I'm going to be on pills the rest of my life. And so at one point, my husband had been, you know, researching, seeing commercials, and he'd reached out to a medicated assisted therapy treatment. And he made me an appointment. He made me an appointment. He called, got the information.
I didn't realize Travis did that.
He did. Well, when he told me about it, I got super mad.
You did?
Super offended. And so he had to call and cancel the appointment. And he told him, he was like, you know, my wife, she's addicted to opiates. She has legitimate pain issues, you know. So he told him all this, and they're like, yeah, you know, have her come in, we'll assess her. You know, we really think we can help her. And I got super mad because he's trying to fix me. You know, you're not my doctor. And so he'd opened the door and talked to me about it, because I really didn't know a whole lot about it. All I knew about was methadone clinics. And I thought, I'm not like them people. I'm not going to go there. They're all on heroin. And so that's really all I knew. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm either going to be on pills the rest of my life, I'm going to be on heroin, and then fentanyl was starting to kick off. So you didn't know what you were getting. So it was getting really scary. If you could find anything, you didn't know what was going to be in it. And so I was on so much that I thought, I'm either going to overdose or I'm going to be on heroin. I don't have any other option, because I can't go on like this. And so when I was researching getting into the methadone clinic, I was so afraid of, there was such a stigma of, I wanted to kick this cold turkey, but I finally had to reach the point to where I tried and failed miserably at that. Mm-hmm. That was not working. So I was going to have to try something else, but it was going to have to be me that wanted to do it, nobody else. And so finally I thought, I have nothing to lose. Okay. My brain's telling me this ain't going to work. Okay. This is not going to get you out of pain. I mean, my brain is talking me out of going to this appointment. I had to make the appointment 2 weeks out, and you had to be in withdrawal before you went. Well, when I called both places, I called the methadone clinic and I called to find out about Suboxone. I knew nothing about Suboxone when I first called. And when I called the methadone clinic, it was cheaper, but you had to be able to go every single day between 5 and 10, and you had to go every day. And at the time I was working, I was having to use a car. We were having to share a car, so I could not get there. It was too far away. It was 45 minutes to the clinic, and you didn't know. If you didn't show up, you were not going to get your medicine for that day. Mm-hmm. So the reason I ended up going through the Suboxone route is because you went for the first 2 months, you went every week. And you were doing drug tests, and it was super strict, but I could actually do that and still hold down a job, because I thought, if I'm late to work and lose another job, I can't. So that's why I went that route. And so I'd also done research about, people doing all kinds of, illegal stuff in the parking lots, and you're standing outside the parking lot. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. If I'm going to do this, I want to give it a legitimate shot, and I want to see a doctor. I want to be held accountable. So I had to book it 2 weeks out, almost canceled it numerous times. Okay. You had to be in withdrawal when you went, which was very hard for me. I had to pay $300 the very first appointment. I had to drive myself to the appointment because my husband was at work. My mom was in withdrawal because she's addicted. She couldn't take me. I'm driving there, and I'm thinking I got $300 in my hand, and I'm gripping the steering wheel because my brain, that demon in my head is telling me this ain't going to work. Okay. It is not going to work. You're about to blow $300. Just pull off right here. It took everything in me to physically get there. And I went and I just laid it all out. And I was aired everything I had. Okay. And I was I have almost lost everything I've got. And I'm at the end of my rope, and I'm going to die if something doesn't happen. And so the program that I started off on, he was a Suboxone doctor, and they did very intensive therapy. It was very strict, drug test every time you went. And so they started off, they would give you a 3-day prescription, and I was scared that it wasn't going to work. Cause I was supposed to have somebody with me to drive me. Okay. But nobody came with me. So he had to write me the prescription. I had to leave and go get it filled. So I had to take it by myself. So I'm afraid, what if it don't work? What if it throws me into precipitated withdrawal? What if I haven't waited long enough? And so I had to go. I'd been in withdrawal about 36 hours when I took it. And I am literally about to fall on my face in the pharmacy. And I'm so scared. And literally, I'm in the parking lot. And because my tolerance was so high, they had to start me off on 16 milligrams. And I took it. And I'm sitting in the car, and I was on fumes. I had to go get gas. And I remember about 15 minutes after I took it, I felt like 1,000 pounds had been lifted off of me. And then in that instance, I didn't think this is it, but I thought I might have a legitimate chance at this, and it was hard. It was very hard because in the beginning, that part of my brain still wanted to overtake. Mm-hmm. Still wanted to convince me this ain't working. It's not going to work. It's going to stop working at any point in time. It was very hard to break those habits. My whole family, nobody trusted me with any amount of money. It was, which I had broken their trust. I deserved that. But then once I kind of started coming to my senses, the immense amount of shame, because I couldn't be shameful in the act.
Yeah.
But once I started kind of getting clear and realizing the mess that I had made of my life, I was so ashamed, and I had a really hard time opening up, and being honest about everything that had happened. And when I got in on my program, the doctor was great, but the programs back in Tennessee, they didn't do meetings there. You had to find meetings. They would tell you where to go. And so I had been to meetings before because I had tried, to stop. And I'd, been to AA. I've been to, a bunch of NA meetings. Most of them would be at church. And I identified with that because I was a Christian, But the doctor sent me to all these places to where I could go to a meeting, but it was all NA based. And while that's the case, you are not sitting there, if you are on medicated assisted therapy, completely substance free. Okay. So then you feel like, okay, I'm lying. All right. You feel like you're like this big because you want to be honest about it, but you don't feel like you can be because everybody in there's like, I have been completely off everything for this many years. And I'm like, I shouldn't even be sitting in here. Like, I don't even deserve to be in this chair. So I'm beating myself up so bad that I don't even want to go. And I need to be in these meetings. Okay. Because I need that community right then worse than I ever have. And I was like, I had to isolate myself. I had to cut off all these people that I had associated with for years to try to give myself a chance to actually do this right for the first time. And so I was very isolated, going to work, not telling anybody about nothing, just living, a lie. And I'm like, I can't even be honest in my meeting, So I experienced that the entire time I lived in Tennessee, because back there, insurance, they don't take insurance. Like if you go to get on medicated assisted therapy, they'll take it for like the prescription, but you pay cash. The doctor is it's all about money in a lot of places, which keeps a lot of people in addiction because they can't afford it. Like it was costing me $1,000 a month to see my doctor and get my medicine. And I mean, barely scraping by and trying to put my life back together. And I mean, I couldn't afford it, but if I didn't have it, I knew I was going to relapse. I knew I was, because I finally could kind of start working on myself when I wasn't just in the pits of withdrawal and pain that I couldn't take. And I was like, I want to do this, I want to get my life back on track. But it was so difficult. I mean, it was literally, I was crawling my way out of the addiction. And so I ended up finally getting into recovery and getting on medication therapy in December of 2017. And I was actually in recovery for a year when my mom was still using, which was really hard because me and her were like each other's best friend and worst enemy because we enabled each other. And like, I had to put her at arm's length because I'm trying to stay on this, path, and I'm watching her. It put me into a situation where I felt tempted. Then I felt like crap because my life's getting better and hers is falling apart. Then she'd get mad at me because I felt good and she felt awful. So it was really, really hard. And I mean, I'm my mom's only child. So that first year when it started working for me, I wanted her to try, but I couldn't make her try. She had to want to. And I was like, it's her choice, and she was getting a prescription and she was afraid to go because she knew they'd cut her off forever for being able to get any prescription. So she having to work through that, as bad as she wanted to not be that way anymore, giving up that prescription of knowing that forever she would be red flagged in the computer. And I was like, it's got to be up to her. And finally, after about a year, her marriage was falling apart and everything kind of come to a head, and she come and stayed with me, and she ran out of medicine. And I was like, I can't help you. Okay. But she really had to reach a wall where she was like willing to try, and she had to want to. And I told her, I said, if you'll just give it a shot, I said, I'm telling you, I never thought I would be able to say that I think I'm not going to have to be on pills anymore. And I said, I really think if you will try, it can work for you. And it did. And thankfully, things started to get better once she was also in recovery, because then we could hold each other accountable, because there was a huge void between us when I was trying to get my life together and she wasn't, and there was all this anger, and so we were able to work through a lot of that. And then we were trying to go to meetings and find a recovery community that we felt like we belonged in, because that was the one thing that was missing. We had all these people that we, valued and looked up to, and we wanted to go to meetings, but it was like, and we would go, but it's like, we felt like we don't belong here, like, where do we belong? I don't know. We have to go because it was part of our program. We needed to be there, but nobody else was like us back there. And so we were going how they do up here at this church. What's it called? Celebrate Recovery. They do that back in Tennessee too. And it was super inspirational for me because I've went to church my whole life. I got saved, and baptized when I was 11. And I was really trying to work on my relationship with God and like get my life back on track because I'd been out of his way for a long time. And I knew that he had a hand in why this was working, and so we were going, and I felt like if we had somebody that we could talk to about this, the conflict, of we would go and fill the prescription. It'd be up to the pharmacist if he wanted to fill it or not. We were still getting judged and stigmatized, and we were trying to work through those very, baby steps of the early recovery. And when that was back, we were there 2018. In 2019, we managed to save enough money to come on vacation for the first time in like forever. And we came down here to the beach, and we had family here. By the time we left, we decided we were going to move, just start over. We're like, what do we got to lose? Like, let's just start fresh somewhere else. And by moving, we were actually able to move to a place where they were a little bit more ahead of the curve on recovery, and they actually accept your insurance. Like, it's easier to get, access to a doctor, access to a therapist. The more things are more affordable. It's not just all about money. And we moved here in August of 2019. And then right at the beginning of the year, and right as COVID started happening in 2020, I found out I was pregnant. And that threw me a major curveball because my daughter was 9, and like we thought we were done having kids. And I never thought I'd be able to have any more, as sick as I had been. I wouldn't even consider it. I thought that ship has sailed. I can't get pregnant. I'll always never be able to have another one. As bad as we didn't want to close the door, it didn't even seem possible. So when that happened, I had been on MAT for like 3 years. And then
so take us back, Ashley, to when you start the medically assisted treatment, and how you starting that affected your marriage.
Yeah,
so you're still together. So
yeah, we're still together. And at first, it threw Travis a curveball because he had offered, he tried to get me in before, and I just shut it completely down. Okay. I told him, nope, I'm not, that ain't gonna work for me. I don't need that. And so when I said, I brought it up, and that was after that day of just being no money, no heat, no food, no nothing. And I just searched around and thought it can't get no worse than this. And I looked at my child and I thought, I really need to try to do something. If I can't love myself enough, I need to try to do something for her, because she deserves better than this, and I thought, if not, I knew it was just going to be a matter of time. Like, me and Travis were trying to work it out, but if I had not gotten into recovery, we would have not made it. Like, I would have pushed him away, and I was going to lose him and her, because he would have had to step in and take her. I mean, if he was going to be a decent parent, I was going to leave him with no choice. He didn't want to do that, but that's where it would have went. And so we were in those early phases of trying to work our marriage out. And we had to wait 3 months to go back before the judge, and we're walking on ice. Like, every fight we have, it just comes right back up. And I thought, it's right there. I throw it right back in his face. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm either going to really have to really forgive him or be done. Because if I'm going to really forgive him, I'm going to have to find it in here to forgive him, not just say that, And when I was still using, I didn't think I needed to apologize for a thing. Okay. Like, I thought it was all him. He don't understand me. He's crazy. And so I actually brought up trying medication-assisted therapy before we got in to go back to court, was totally floored him. Okay, because at this point I'm like, it's me and the pills or nothing. Like, so I think he signed up for that. So he's like, okay, and he probably thought I'm going to bury her, because if she doesn't do something, it's just a matter of time. But him showing me that he was willing to stay, no matter if I did, that showed me, all right, maybe he loves me in there somewhere, And so through the holidays of that, because that all happened, we split up and I filed a restraining order in like October of that year. And so during the holidays, we got kicked out of our house. We had to move in with my mom and my stepdad. We had nothing. Okay. And he was trying to see me fighting with my stepdad constantly, not knowing if I'm going to call the cops on him or not. And that was the point that we had really lost everything. And he lost everything. He had to borrow a car from a friend. I didn't even have a car. He's trying to work 2 jobs. Couldn't even really give our daughter a Christmas. And during all of that, he didn't bring it up. If I would be sick, he would still try to give me $20, $40, whatever, still enabling me, but he's just trying to keep the peace and put his family back together, so he's trying to do whatever I want him to do at that point. And so bless his heart, but at the time I thought he owes me, I didn't care. And so once those 3 months is going, like into December, when everything took a head and we had no money, okay, and he felt like dirt because he's a provider and a man and all of this, and he's looking at his life and it's just in shambles and there's not a thing he can do about it. And I literally was like, every dime the man would make, I would take, and I thought, I can't keep on like this. Like, he can't even get ahead, can't even save enough money to put a down payment on a car, and it took literally just hitting the wall. My marriage falling apart, cops, none of that mattered. I had to really just sit in my wallow of misery of having no money, no options, and just being cut off from it, because I had hit the road. Like, I'm out of here, I'm gonna find something. I had to be cut off from having no funds, no money, because I was one of these, I'd stay out all night. I wasn't going to sit sick, okay? Some people do, that was not me. The only way I was really going to be miserable enough to make the choice was I had to reach that point. And I was like, and it finally got to that point, like in December. No money, no car. He didn't have any money. Like, I'd take any extra dollar he would have, I would take. By that point, I couldn't buy enough. You couldn't find them. The supply was done. I couldn't get them from a legitimate doctor, because after that last prescription, he called my doctor's office and told them, she's a junkie. Well, guess what happened? I was not going to get any more prescriptions from then, okay? And he called the cops and told them I was. So, I mean, that really blew up, and I had no options, okay? There was going to be no more legitimate prescriptions. Couldn't find pills anywhere. So then I was offered heroin a few times during those weeks, and it was either that or nothing. And I turned it down, but I don't know how. I was losing the willpower.
You did?
I did. Because I told myself, my life's over if I get on the needle. Okay, like, I'm done. And I knew too many people that were on it, and I knew that they said, it's interesting because I've always said, alcohol is what you turn to is your friend. It's what you do. It's good, bad. It's always there. Opiate addiction is like a lover, the worst kind of lover, and it isolates you. It wants to take you away from everything, okay? And it wants you to be alone and think, you don't need anybody else. I'm all you need, and I'm the only thing that's going to make you feel better, And it did. And like, I thought to myself, if I get on heroin, as bad as my tolerance already was, I will never, ever get clean, and that scared me bad enough that I turned it down twice. I don't know if I would have had the willpower to do it a third time, but I was so sick that if I hadn't done something, I would have had to eventually, because I had no other options. I mean, I was so sick out of my mind. And I mean, it drives you to do things you never think you would do. I mean, literally just taking money from people, lying. The truth was not in me. You know, I mean, I literally, if my mouth was moving, I was lying. Okay. And I thought I just had no moral compass whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I knew in my gut, I did not have it in me to stay off of it. If I didn't try one solid time and give it a real go in a program that I had to stay committed to, that I had to be held accountable to, that I had a drug test, okay, that I had somebody over me, I knew I couldn't do it because I tried too many times to stop on my own, and I couldn't. I mean, the withdrawal would be so bad and so insane and last for so long, like they'd be like 3 days. No, okay, 3 days it was just peaking, okay, and I could not do it. I wanted to do it. It wasn't because I didn't want to. I could not do it. I could get past all the other stuff, but the pain would be so bad that I remember praying, God, let me die. Because if I have to feel like this, I just want to die. Like, because my pain was bad before I got on opiates, but man, once I'd been on them and was trying to come off, I mean, I thought, no way, I can't, you know? And that's really why I thought I'll never be off of them, because I thought my pain will never be able to be controlled without pills. And that was a very low point, because I mean, I'm in my early 30s and I'm like, if I live another 40 years, is this what my life's going to be like? You know? And I was so angry at myself. I'd had this surgery. I ended up losing 125 pounds. I was healthy in all the other ways. But then this destroyed my life, and I did it to myself. This was an elective surgery. And they told me the reason why, because I said, why? I mean, I had no family history of it. And they're like, well, we don't really know what causes fibromyalgia. They're like, it can be genetics. They said, but it happens more often in women. They said, and typically it's after a trauma of some kind, a car accident, some kind of trauma. And from where I had been doing okay, and then had that stricture, been so sick and then out of the hospital, there was weeks where I couldn't eat any food by mouth at all. I had like major low potassium, had to get IV potassium. So I had about a month where I was mainly in the hospital a lot. And my body just went through such a traumatic time.
That's a lot.
That it just shocked my system. And I mean, I was doing okay, but dropped a massive amount of weight way too fast, because when you're not eating, you're starving. And
too, Ashley, with fibromyalgia, a lot of it even goes back further.
Yeah.
So like, growing up in a household with a alcoholic father who his behavior is unpredictable. The trauma of that, and then having your husband deployed. The trauma of that, him being hurt, the trauma of that. So it was just added. So the surgery was just the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah. Because I had internalized a lot. I felt like most women, I felt like I had to carry the burden, be strong, especially as a military wife. I was proud of him, but I mean, internally, I stayed in shambles all the time, because I mean, I never knew when he was going to be gone or home. Things were so bad. When he was gone, I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't watch the news. I couldn't listen to the radio. People had to call me before they come over, because I was afraid if somebody knocked on the door, they were calling to tell me, he'd been killed. So it was a tough time in those years. And
you were so young.
I was so young. I mean, he enlisted when I was 18. I was a wife. I was a baby.
How old were you when y'all got married?
So believe it or not, my mom had to sign for me to get married. Okay. So me and Travis were in the same grade, like all through school. But I actually started school as a child when I was 4.5, because my birthday felt like right on the cutoff. So my mom could either send me or keep me back. So I was 4.5 when I started in kindergarten. So I was a year to 2 years younger than everybody in my grade. So like me and Travis were friends growing up, all through adolescence, and we didn't start dating until high school. And so we're in the same grade, but every year he's like 2 years older than me until my birthday. So we dated, and I knew that he always wanted to join the military. I never thought we would wind up together. But once we started dating and stayed together, like sophomore and junior year, it's like, okay, we might actually, have a future together. But then I had to ask myself, I never wanted to be a military wife. Okay, never thought that would happen to me. And I knew he had wanted to join the military since he was a little boy. So I really had to be like, okay, can I do this? Like, do I want to set off on that path? Because we're in wartime. Like, he wanted to join, and when 9/11 happened, he was joining. So I was like, do I have what it takes to do that? Because I knew he was going to get deployed. I knew he was going to go to war. He wanted to go. And so I did a lot of soul searching, and he talked to me, and he probably would have not joined if I told him not to. But if you love somebody, you want them to do what makes them happy. So I didn't know how I was going to do it because I was so young. But I told him, I said, if you want to be with me and I want to be with you and we really want to make this work, I believe we got what it takes to do the long distance thing because we've been friends for so long, you know, we grew up together. And so.
And I think that's what has actually
kept us
been
together.
A staple and kept y'all together.
I think that's
y'all had that.
Mm-hmm. If we hadn't had all that history, that foundation, that friendship and being friends.
Y'all are best friends.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's what's kept us together, you know, and through all the adversity, you know, all the deployments, all of the hard things at the core of it, you know, love is great. But at the end of the day, we built that starting from childhood and we're still friends. And I think that's helped us navigate all that we've had thrown at us because we've been through so much. And I mean, we dated through high school. And then literally when he turned 18, he was going to be leaving right after we graduated for boot camp. Okay. And so I was not going to be 18 yet. Like, so it was either him go and be gone or us try to get married before he left. And I mean, if we got married before he left, my mom and my parents were going to have to sign for me because I wasn't going to be old enough. And he wanted to be able to provide for me. He wanted to be able to get on a list. You know, we knew we wanted to get married. He'd asked my parents, you know, he's like, and we'd done made that decision, but he was like, I can't support you or have you on insurance or anything unless we're married. And so literally my parents signed for us to get married when I was 17. And my whole family freaked out, okay? Because they're like, y'all will drop out of school. She'll be pregnant. He'll never join the military. They had zero faith in the fact that we would accomplish anything, okay? And at the time, they thought we were getting married for all the wrong reasons, okay? And literally, the one person that we had in our corner was my mom. And everybody's like, you're nuts. Like, there's what? You're going to sign for your 17-year-old daughter to get married? And she was like, they're like, they'll never make it. And she said, you're right. They won't unless they have help. Unless they have somebody that will believe in them, they won't make it. She said, but we've been through premarital counseling through our pastor because we went to the same church our whole life. And when we did that, our pastor went to my mom and he said, you know, I would tell you most kids their age would not stand a chance. He said, but they can make it. He said, I really believe they can. And so my mom, I don't know how she did it now that I'm a mother, because I mean, literally the idea of that, but she signed for her baby to get married to a man that she knew was going to take her away because she knew that he was going to join the military and we were going to move and leave, you know. But I think because she known Travis his whole life, and watched him and knew the kind of character he was. And I'm really grateful for her for that because we were able to actually be married a year before he left to join the military. And I think that's why we made it. I think if we hadn't built that foundation before he was gone, that we would not have been able to navigate all of the changes, you know, but because we've seen a lot of divorce, you know, and I mean, through his issues, and everything that he's dealt with, you know, being somebody who's seen and had to do so much, and that does not end when they get out, you know, and then with all my issues, it's like, you know, for us to be, he's about to be 38 and I'm 36 and we have lived so much life in that amount of time. We battled with infertility twice. I mean, we've had addiction. I mean, we've dealt with a lot and it would have broke most people, you know, but I think at the end of the day, when I was at my worst, he couldn't turn his back on me because inside he is my best friend. And he knew that in here I was in there somewhere, you know, and he wanted to believe that I could beat this, you know, and he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself because I told myself, I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this, you know, and so it's when he stuck by me. And I did. I mean, it was hard those first couple of months because I was trying to heal my brain and my habits that had just been hardwired in me. Like I literally.
So I have a question though, because we're both in recovery, and obviously we both got sober two different ways, two different pathways, and obviously, like I believe in the MAP program. It's worked for you, and I've seen so many people. Yeah. Although, me personally, I wouldn't trust myself to put something in my body. Yeah. And
there's a lot of people that way.
But that just shows you the difference because I'm like, if they're. It would terrify me because like there's something in my brain that I know me and that I could not take that the way it is
it's supposed to.
I mean, I just would be like, and I mean, even now, 4 years, I mean, it's still like, I mean, I have that awareness and it terrifies me, but
it's scary. Like,
but there again, our addictions were different.
Are so different. Yeah. And see, on the same token,
so how are you able to take it? I guess my question is
the way you're supposed
how
to.
How are you able to take your prescription the way that it was supposed to be taken? Because as an addict, our brain does not work that way.
And that doesn't go away. So even though you go through therapy, and they put you through a lot of psychotherapy, and don't get me wrong, in the beginning, okay, my brain would tell me you need more. You need more. So what happens? You take more. You run out. You get sick. Okay. I know.
So that would happen.
That would happen in the beginning.
So
and
you just had to work
simply because I would take it and my brain would tell me I'm feeling withdrawal. Because with Suboxone, you're supposed to be able to take it one time a day and you don't experience withdrawal. Once you get to the dose you're supposed to be at, you should wake up 24 hours later and you should still be stable. If you're not, it shouldn't be like a roller coaster. If you're feeling that before that 24-hour mark, your dose isn't stable. Yeah. So a lot of people that are not successful with it is they don't get their dose leveled out right. And once I got on Suboxone, I knew I could never be on methadone. And the reason I couldn't, it works for a lot of people, but the two reasons I couldn't be on it, they start you real low. And it can take months to get you because it's individual, so they have to get each individual person on the right dose. Well, it's so tightly regulated that they start you low and build you high. So once you start on it and you're in the program, you're still sick. Like you leave the methadone clinic sick, you're sick all that day, and then you're standing in line sick to get dosed again. I don't have enough willpower to do that. So like if I was still in withdrawal, I would use. Yeah. And that would scare me to death. And also methadone doesn't have an opiate blocker. If I was on something that I knew that I could take something and get by that, I know me, I know my brain. I have to have something with a blocker that if I take that, it's going to do nothing. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to feel it. And it's the truth because you don't. Like I remember not long, probably about a year after I got on Suboxone, I had an abscessed tooth that I had to have pulled and it hurt so bad. And they literally prescribed me like 4 hydros. And I mean, my whole face was like swole up and they're like, and they knew because I had to tell them or I would have got kicked off my program. And the doctor gave me permission, knew how many they gave me. I told him didn't feel a thing. Okay. And I was mad because my face felt like it had been beat with a ball bat. And I was hoping it would just take the edge off this pain a little bit. But literally I learned right then, it's going to do me absolutely no good to try to take anything. But if I'm just like you in that way, if I knew, because that part of my head knows that if I had a back door around it, okay, I would. Yeah. So I have to hold myself to the place where I am on something that I can't get that feeling from anything else. Because even though you started off for a legitimate reason, it takes over and you're searching for that euphoria forever. Okay. And I have never one time in my entire time that I have been on Suboxone ever gotten high off of it. Yeah. Never. No matter what dose I've been on, ever. And I was scared of that because if it did, I would abuse it. So I know for me,
so you just had to it's like retraining your brain though.
Yeah. And I really had to be honest about, you got to give me something that ain't going to make me feel high, that ain't going to make me feel good. I just want to feel like I'm not dying. Okay. Yeah. I cannot get high off this. I cannot have any euphoria because I'll abuse it, and that was hard to admit, because then I had to really admit that I'm never going to be better. Okay. Yeah. I'm always going to be wired that way. And, so I'm always going to have to make that decision every day to not pick up, because I know that if I don't have my medicine, I go right back to where I was 6 years ago. If I could not get my prescription, I would be right back on pills. And it took me a long time to admit that, but I was like, I know me. And even though I don't want to use, the thing that keeps me in stable recovery on Suboxone is that it helps my pain. And I'm not out of pain. I've never been completely out of pain. But I'm not all up and down. It's a functional level to where I'm not, in the bed. I'm able to drive. I'm able to function. I'm able to do all of those things and be present. But it's a manageable amount of pain, and I know when I open my eyes one morning, I'm not going to be in utter just misery, and I'm not going to be thinking, when's the next time I can take my medicine? Yeah. If it was ever like that, then I would be right back to the person I was before, but it took a long time. And when you first get on the program, like I had to have something I was accountable to: drug tests, therapy, checking in, they count your meds. Like you never know when they're going to call you in, because you do have those habits that are hard to break. Right. And it takes some time to kind of rewire. And then once you don't feel like garbage for a while, and you're actually seeing, I actually have some money in my pocket and I can eat and I don't feel like trash, you actually start to like not having your life just in the toilet, but it takes a while to build some confidence, because in a while I thought, one decision, I can blow this, and in the beginning, my brain would tell me, you need more. So I would take be out and then be sick.
That's what I was wondering. How do you just break that automatically?
It doesn't happen. And it's not that you want to overuse, because it does no good. Yeah. I mean, you don't, I
know that you couldn't get off of it, but like that your brain. I mean, even taking a vitamin, I want to take two. That's how my brain's wired. Your brain, two's better.
I had to, unfortunately, learn the hard way, because in the beginning, if you get on medicated assisted therapy, they don't trust you because you can't be trusted. They give you like just a few.
You can't be trusted.
And then they're like, okay, and if you overtake, or if we call you in and you don't have them, we're going to kick you out. Well, you know that. But your brain still tells you, I feel awful, we're in withdrawal. So you'll take a half of one, and you'll run out. And if you don't tell them, then you just got to sit with it and be sick, because you're not going to have enough. And I did that for like the first couple of weeks, because I didn't need more, but my brain would make me feel like I needed more, because I was so used to taking something every couple of hours. That habit was really hard to break, of dosing once a day. It really was hard. And so, I was like, I need to be taking something.
I need something every like 2 hours.
It was awful. And I would make myself feel sick because I couldn't get out of here. And like literally, I got away with it for about a month, because I would just make every weekend before I would have to go back to the doctor, I would be short, because I would be a half, cut a little bit off, and I didn't need it, but I felt like I did. And I was sitting sick all weekend. And finally I was like, I need to tell them. Well, what happened? I get kicked out. I go tell them, you're out of here. Like, it's a no tolerance policy. If you overuse, if you divert, you're out of here, because they get funded for that. Mm-hmm. They can't keep you on if they think you're diverting your medicine. Even though I admitted that I was overtaking it, and I was so early in recovery, and I know it happens to other people. That's the way we are. We're going to make mistakes. There's going to be bumps in the road. Yeah. I was out the door, and I was sitting in the car thinking, here I go again. I've been kicked out of another place, but I had to own it. And I did. It took a while for me to realize I'm not in withdrawal. It's in my head. And I had to admit to myself, I'm making excuses for this behavior, and I would. You get called in, you got 24 hours to show up, and they would count them. And you can get called in at any point in time, no matter how long you're on a program, wherever you're going is part of that. You sign the paperwork. If you pop on a drug test, if you're short, if we call you in, you got 24 hours to come in. If you are short one, we have the right to kick you out. Mm-hmm. So if you're feeling some kind of way and feeling antsy, you need to tell them and be honest, because if you try to divert and get around it, they're going to find out, and it's still that way here in South Carolina. But I feel like here,
it's a little bit more relaxed.
I feel like they're more ahead of the curve, because when I was in Tennessee, like back home, it was very, you pay for what you get. Okay. Like you might be lucky enough to get your insurance to pay for your prescription, but it was hard. It's hard to find recovery any other way because it's cost a fortune. Like it costs so much money to get help. If you cannot do it cold turkey, just all the way, it's either that way or nothing, because people in that situation don't have that kind of money, and thankfully I was still somehow working. Well, I managed to not just totally I don't know how I didn't get arrested, but I mean, if I didn't still have a job,
I don't know how you did either.
It was a miracle that I never went to jail. It was just a matter of time. I mean, it would have happened if I hadn't. But
you would have stayed in it.
If I had, it was just the good Lord watching over me, because I don't know. I was speeding, driving on expired tags. I mean, all the things, and it's just so a blessing that I did not get pulled over, because I would have went to jail. But I
always went to jail.
I managed to hold it together enough to still have a job. So that was why, because I mean, you got to have the money to get in the program. And I mean, it costs hundreds of dollars to first get in. If you're getting somewhere that doesn't take insurance, and there's still a lot of states like that. So, I mean, when we moved here, we just needed a fresh start. I'd been on it 2 years. I felt like, okay, I did some research, looked in. I was like, because I've worked in spas for so many years. I was like, can I work in South Carolina? I'm taking a huge chance, leaving all my clients and starting fresh. But my mom was divorced, and it's like, let's just take a chance. If it doesn't work out, we can always go back, but let's just go. And so once we got down here, we actually found that there was a lot of places that offered counseling. There was a lot of doctors, because used to the doctors would take 8 hours of training and could only have 30, patients. So it used to be a lot harder. And there was very few doctors that did medicated assisted therapy. And if they did, they were like primary doctors. So they weren't actually addiction doctors. So you really wasn't getting much.
Yeah, they really didn't know a lot.
No, it's like you were going in, do a drug test. They really wasn't getting deep with you. Like they had very little training, and because they were primary doctors, that's not their specialty. So I felt like once I got moved down here in 2019, and the doctors were a little bit more educated, on treating people in this situation. And so I found a good doctor. And they could write for everything. They could help you if you had anxiety. They could help you with all, because I wanted to find somebody that was going to be able to treat me across the board. I didn't want to feel like I was doctor shopping, I didn't, because I'd done that. And I was like, I want somebody that I can be honest with, that can treat me, for birth control or this or what. And so I got in with a really good doctor, and then I got pregnant, and then they didn't treat women who were pregnant. And I was like, great. And then COVID happened. So I found I was pregnant right as COVID happened. So it was really crazy, because then you couldn't even go into the doctor. Everybody went to virtual appointments. And so by then it was like, I had been going to meetings, once I got moved down here. So the isolation was like, whoa, it was hard, because you need that, you need to be around like-minded individuals, and the whole world shut down. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I was absolutely scared to death, because I knew nobody who had been on medicated assisted therapy and given birth. And because when I was first pregnant, I didn't so much as take a Tylenol. Yeah. And I was like, the minute I knew that I was pregnant and I could not come off this medicine, okay, I was on 16 milligrams. There was no way I was going to be able to come off. It's dangerous to try to come off. They tell you that when you go. They're like, do not try to wean down. Do not try to come off, because if you go into withdrawal, you could literally spontaneously miscarry. So you feel like garbage. You don't want to take it, but you're stuck. I mean, it's safer for you to stay on. But then, I'm not just dosing myself. Yeah. I've got a baby, and now what, And so when I went in and I was like, do you know how to treat a woman? Do you have experience treating women on medicated assisted therapy that don't want to wean off or don't have the option? Because once I had been on it for about 2 years, I really was thinking, I don't want to be on this forever. Is it going to be an option for me to come off? Because most people will get on, medicated assisted therapy, get through the initial early recovery, the cravings and all that, do a lot of therapy, and then try to get to a place to where they can wean down and eventually not have to be on medicine forever. Whenever I would try to do that, I would go right back to hurting unbelievably. Okay. And it was, tried a few times to see if I could wean down. And I just felt awful. And I was like, I'm going to be right back where I started. And so finally my doctor sat down with me and she's like, Ashley, there's a very good possibility that you might be a lifer on this. She said, and there's a lot of people like that. She said, I know when you're talking to people, they'll tell you I was on it 2 years, 5 years. It's hard to come off of. You got to really want to, and you're going to experience withdrawal, and it's going to take a long time to do it the right way. But you can't. Most people can. They can wean down little by little, and if they really want to, they can come off. She said, but those people don't have underlying issues that they're using, like, because when a lot of people, they'll take all kinds of the health issues. Problem. She said if people were taken for a back injury, or if they're taken for chronic pain that can't be fixed with surgery or something like that, then you have that issue because you weren't just using to get high. She said, and that pain is still there. She said, and you're going to have to treat it one way or the other. And I don't trust myself. I will never be able to take narcotics again. I know that. And that would be the road I would go back down, because I've tried to wean off. And the minute if I had experienced withdrawal, I would be right back where I started. And that's scary, but I have finally had to admit that, and she was like, unfortunately, with the kind of illness you have, at this point, it's incurable, and you're going to have to manage it for the rest of your life. She says, so, when you're hearing other people talk about recovery, they probably don't have these underlying health issues. Right. They're able to just stop, and then they have to work through their craving, but then they feel okay. She said, you don't feel okay. You're hurting, and it's life-changing amount of pain. And she said, so it's a different set of circumstances. So that was very difficult, because I thought, like everybody else, I'm going to be chained to this for the rest of my life. I'm going to be, and people are like, they're invisible handcuffs or whatever. All them things are going through your head.
I've learned a lot just from knowing you and being hard on the medication.
And then you're thinking, what if I get in a car accident? What if I have to have surgery? Okay. Yeah. Like, you're thinking all these things. And then when I got pregnant, I was scared to death, because I was in labor for 21 hours with my daughter. I got an epidural. It changes the whole game. And I'm like, being on this medicine is long-term is going to change my life. Okay. And it really affects a lot of things. And when I got on it.
But you got through your pregnancy.
I did. I got through the pregnancy with a lot of therapy. I was so afraid. Okay. My doctors were great. They never made me feel, judged. They never made me feel like I was doing something wrong. I could be honest with them. And I told them, I said, it will kill me if my child is born and experiences withdrawal, because anybody that has felt that, the idea of an infant, innocent child going through that, and I thought, it's my fault. And all I could think in my mind was, the minute he leaves my womb, he's in imminent danger, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I thought, if that happens, it's my fault. And but
that awareness that you carry.
Yeah, that's what everybody said. They're like, you're a good mother if you care, right. And that's what I have found out in talking to other women who've been through this. No mom on MAT wants to be doing that while they're pregnant. They don't want to be on a substance like that, and it's like, but it's one alternative to the other, and I found out, I had done research, because I was still childbearing age when I was starting on that. And even though I wasn't planning on having another child, you never know, I hadn't had a hysterectomy. So I wanted to know what can happen. And so they told me, they're like, well, there's a 50-50 chance, because I was like, really, what's going to happen here? I need to prepare myself. And they're like, we really can't tell you for sure. They're like, but what we can tell you is the most important thing is that you stay stable through the pregnancy. You listen to your body, you be honest with us, because I didn't know that the pregnancy could affect the medicine so much. The hormones from the pregnancy, weight gain, it's an increased heart rate, the placenta, the absorption of the medication, and your metabolism all changes. So it's very common. Like, I'd been stable on the dose I had been on for 2.5, 3 years. And then when I got about 15 weeks pregnant, I started feeling really rough. And I thought, oh, it's just pregnancy, and this went on for a couple of days, but I was in therapy and I was meeting with my midwife and I was talking to her virtually. And I was like, I felt awful, and I'm thinking morning sickness, like I'm early pregnant. So that's what I'm attributing to. But she noticed during our visit, I had one of those little cuffs. I took my heart rate was up. She noticed my pupils were dilated. And she's like, I think you're in withdrawal. I was like, huh? Because I hadn't been in withdrawal in like 2.5 years and it wasn't even registering. And she was like, this has been going on for a few days, like a week or so. And I'm like, yeah, I've been taking my medicine and everything. She's like, your body can, you're getting a little bit further along. It can affect how it metabolizes. And so I was like scared to adjust the dose because I thought if I take more, then that's going to make the baby more likely, but that's actually not true. She said, dose has nothing to do with it. She said, what matters is that you stay stable, adjust your dose as needed, try to take it on time every day. She said, because what they have found in the research and the more recent studies, because they used to think this was totally opposite, but they found that women that do that and actually do stay stable and don't try to take as little as possible and keep themselves where they're supposed to be, their babies do better. Yeah. They find if they try to stay as low as possible and the mom is experiencing withdrawal, but she doesn't increase and adjust as needed, their babies more likely do experience withdrawal. So she said, if you're stable, the baby's stable. She said, if you're not feeling bad, the baby is feeling what you're feeling. She said, and once the baby's born, then we'll address that, because I was like, can I breastfeed? Can I not? What's going to happen? Are they going to take my baby? And it really, what's interesting is really just depends on where you deliver and how educated they are, because each hospital and county does things differently. Some hospitals, they actually do score your babies like 1 to 10, and they'll come in and depending on what kind of symptoms they're having, they'll score them. And then there's some that don't. And the hospital I delivered at did what's called the eat, sleep, console method. So they don't take the baby away from you. They let you do immediate skin to skin. They let you nurse on demand because they found that's soothing to the baby. Okay. Just being near mom, they do better. And they find that they just keep a close eye on them. Make sure they're eating, make sure they're consolable, make sure they're having wet diapers and that everything's good. And as long as they're, doing okay, they'll keep them in the room with you. And they do require that you stay so much time in the hospital for monitoring. At my hospital, they required 72 hours for babies born on Suboxone and 5 days if babies were born on methadone. And so I knew going in, they told me pack for a week because you don't know how long you're going to be there. And I was like, okay. And so I'm hoping and praying the whole time. I stayed awake those entire 3 days because I was so afraid if somebody came in the room and I was asleep. You never know from one shift to the next. Yeah. When the nurse walks through the room, she's going to look at your chart if she's going to judge you before she walks in there or not. And I had read horror stories of these women. They're like, my baby's fine. And then this nurse comes on, the baby's doing great. And then they took the baby to the NICU. And then they're like, oh, the baby needs medication. So I was like, I'm going to stay awake the whole time. He was doing fine. He was eating. But I was so afraid for the shoe to drop. Like, I knew he'd probably be okay for the first day, and I was like those first 24 hours, but I was super afraid after those first 24 hours because I knew that if he was going to have any kind of symptoms at all, that would be when it would show up. And I was like, I just prayed harder than I've ever prayed in my life, that he would be okay, because the guilt that I was going to have to live with, I was like, and I tried to prepare my husband, because a lot of women, they don't tell their family. They're ashamed. They don't feel like they can be honest with their family about they're taking this medicine and they're going to have to stay. And the baby might have symptoms or might not. So they don't say anything. And then if you have to stay, and you typically do for monitoring, they got to make sure the baby's going to be okay before you can take it home. And then they're trying to come up with an excuse, covering it up. And I'm like, that just makes it worse if you don't feel like you can be honest about it. And it's like, you already feel guilty enough. And I mean, my husband, I would tell him, I'm like, look, we're going to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Okay. He could have symptoms. It's possible. I'm taking a medication that he's going to be cut off from abruptly after he's born. Hopefully he don't, and we'll be prepared for that. But you need to be prepared that if they come in the room, we have to roll with the flow and do what they say. You cannot lose it, okay? Because this goes with the territory of being on this medicine. And like my husband, he wanted to leave like the next day. Okay, he's like, we're out of here. And I was like, no, dude, like we're not going home. And like when the pediatrician tried to say, yeah, we'll get y'all out of here on the third day, my husband went out in the parking lot and called my mom and was livid. Okay. And she had to literally talk him off the ledge and be like, bro, like you need to calm down. He's like, the baby's fine. And they're being crazy. And she's like, just calm down.
He was scared.
And he wanted
to get, we got to get out of here.
Well, he wanted to get home and his daughter, meet her brother, and my mom, because we could have no visitors. And Wyatt was doing fine. But I told him, I said, that's not how it works, Travis. I said, I'm on this medicine. I've been preparing the entire 9 months to know that I'm at their mercy, okay? And if I don't do what they say, and if you don't do what they say, things could get real bad for me. So you need to just calm down, okay? We got to just roll with the flow. If they need to take the baby to the NICU, okay. If CPS walks in, act the way, don't act like a nut, okay? I said, because they do not have to let us leave here with that baby, okay? I said, they're going to do what they're going to do, and you just got to go along with the ride. I said, because some hospitals, they do. It's mandatory protocol. No matter how long you've been in recovery, they have to report it to CPS, and you don't know. So, I mean, you're sitting there with your baby, and you're scared every time somebody knocks on the door that it's CPS, and that they're going to open a home study, and I'm like, this might happen. I'm like, but if it does, we have nothing to hide. They can come do a home study. I said, we're not doing anything wrong, but people got a job to do. And I said, how you act is really going to make or break how this goes. I said, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, most of the time they open the case and then close it, I said, but I don't have any say so. I said, I think he thinks I'm perfect and everything. I said, but it doesn't matter. The baby's going to be born on this medicine, and depending on what their protocol is, we're just going to have to follow along, So it was very stressful 3 days, because I'm thinking that last day, I'm like, please God, like let everything go okay. Like, and some of the nurses that would come in would just be angels, and some of them would have no idea what was going on. That I would be like, I need to get my medicine, because I had to bring my own medicine, because they didn't keep it. I had to check it into the pharmacy. I would have to tell them when I'm supposed to get it. They had not a clue. So it was either 50-50. They were really educated or did not know anything. So, I mean, that last day I was really scared, because I was like, what if somebody comes in here and they just have, it doesn't matter what the circumstance is, you are a junkie, that's it, you shouldn't have a baby. And that happens in some situations, and it's really scary, because it keeps women from getting help. It keeps them from being honest, especially if they're pregnant, because, it's so taboo and people look down on you, and you feel awful. But I mean, if you feel like you can't be honest about it, then it puts you in a whole different mindset. And I've known women that have lied their whole pregnancy, and then they get to the hospital, they're going to know, if you've been taking anything. And then the whole ball of wax has changed at that point. Like, you are not leaving there, and things are not going to go the way you want them to. But it's really sad, because I believe everybody should do what works for them. If you're able to get your life together, and you are a productive member of society, and you can be trusted with your kids, and you can hold down a job, and you can do all the things that you need to do in this life to function, it does not matter what you and your doctor, what prescription you're on. Okay. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, and you're not breaking the law, I'm like, I think a big mindset is, there's still a lot of people that don't believe addiction is a disease, because they wouldn't shame people who fill their insulin and take it every day. They wouldn't shame people who are taking their blood pressure medicine. And there is people that are going to abuse everything. It doesn't matter how they try to fix it or cut it. If they want to abuse it, they're going to, but what is bad is there's a handful of people that are going to divert and abuse whatever because they want to. But the people that legitimately want to change their life, it makes it a lot harder, because there's a lot of people through the power of social media and TikTok and, the pandemic, have found a way to recover out loud. And really build a community and tell their story, and by helping people in doing so, but all through the comments, you'll get like 99% that are really supportive. And then people are like, you're still a junkie. I'm like, no, I'm not the person I was before. Thank God. Okay. And I'm like, but it doesn't matter. You're never going to be good enough, and that's really sad, because I know for a fact it keeps some people from thinking, even if there's something out there that can save my life, I can't do that because people don't agree with it, and it's like, you have to finally make a decision that if this has failed so many times, if it's not worked, you need to try something else.
Yeah.
Like, you need to try, as long as you're alive, keep trying.
Yes.
Because it's like, now it's so scary. And like, I understand, I mean, I've got a teenager, and it's such a different world. And like, my daughter was young when a lot of this was going on. Thankfully, I got it together before she got old enough to remember a lot of it. But the day is going to come where I'm going to have to be honest with her. She knows her mom's a recovering addict. I've talked to her about that. But I'm really going to have to be transparent with her, about it, because I would be a hypocrite not to, But airing all of that to her is going to be difficult because she doesn't see me that way, And for many years outside of a meeting, I wouldn't tell anybody. Because they're like, you never look like somebody. I'm like, what does an addict look like? I'm like,
right.
Nobody
knows.
Look like an addict. I'm like, 1 in 3 people suffer from some kind of addiction, And looking back on it with family history, transfer of addiction from having surgery, the writing was kind of on the wall. I mean, the odds weren't good for me. But, I wanted so badly not to be that. So it's not a, character flaw. It's not, I found out that once you do, the chemical change in your brain, it just happens, and we can't control our brain. And I wish, that didn't happen, but it's made me who I am today. And it's made me a stronger person. Yeah. It's made me, I've met so many people. It's given me so many experiences. Does not, it comes with its cons, unfortunately. Being on MAT is hard. I had to have a drug-free delivery. I've had to have surgeries with no medication. They don't tell you that these medications affect your teeth. They affect all these different things. I've got to have my teeth pulled. I had a perfect smile before, and it causes dry mouth. And I'm actually in a lawsuit for it. And, I'm so angry about it because although it probably wouldn't have changed it, it would have been nice to know, So, I mean, it definitely comes with its downfalls. It's not all roses. And, you still, depending on where you feel, you'll get pharmacists that don't want to fill it or treat you awful like you're in there committing a crime or something, And it's like, finally, you just have to reach a point where you're like, I'm living my life and I can let it bother me. Or I can just brush it off because you're never going to please everybody, Right. And I'm like, if they don't think I'm clean, fine, but they don't know the life I was living before. So, right. And I mean, it's sad because I know there's a lot of people who are just like me, still do. But they don't think anything can help them, know, and they've had so many people say, you've got to go to rehab. You've got to do this. That's the only way that you're going to get and stay clean. And it's like, I relapsed every single time I did that. And I know that if I had not gotten into recovery any way I could have, I would be dead today because I could not have stayed alive doing what I was doing. It was going to hit the wall. I was either going to wind up in prison, kill myself, or kill other people, and it's sad, but it's like, if the support of the people being honest about it, if they're trying to get better and it's an option, I say do what you got to do. Like do what you feel like you got to do, because anything is better than doing drugs.
Well, anything's better than the life you're living,
risking your life
lying,
every time,
the cheating, the manipulating, you're willing to lose everything.
And I mean, you,
and that is what really addiction is.
It is.
Take what you value the most, and if you're willing to risk that, then you have an addiction.
Because I
think that's how I look at it.
It
like
does.
If I have something in my life and I'm willing to risk what I value most, then that is an addiction. That's the problem.
Well, I'm sure you all can agree. Because I mean, most people know people who've been addicted to something, alcohol, something. And I know growing up, I just looked at my dad like he was scum of the earth. I thought, why can't he love us enough? Why can't he just quit?
It is.
And the truth is, it didn't have anything to do with us.
But
it had nothing to do with that, because
Yeah.
I really did not understand him. And we had a very distant and very strained relationship for a long time. And he was not a good father. You know, I mean, he wasn't. He had been an alcoholic since he was 11, you know, his whole life. And I mean, he ruined 2 marriages, 3 relationships with his kids. He tried numerous times to stop. At one point in time, he stopped for 9 months. And then just one day he decided, I'm going to the store. And I mean, my mom nor me could understand why we couldn't love him enough to make him want to change. And then when I got into addiction myself, I finally realized it had nothing to do with us. It had nothing to do with how much he loved us or didn't. He had to deal with this for himself. And because I loved my daughter more than anything in this world, and I would have laid down and died for her, but she was not enough to make me get help and get clean. And the power, the love was not strong enough to overcome this drive, this physical addiction that I had. And I mean, I thought I would never do that. And it does. It turns you into the worst version of yourself, you know, and I know that for the rest of my life, and the medication is part of it, but I've been lucky that I know that's not a quick fix. You know, it's very much a total life change, total brain change. I mean, total way of thinking, because then you have all the aftermath of everything that you've done that you have to try to fix, you know, and the medication is part of it, you know.
But you went through, I mean, very intense therapy sessions.
Very intense therapy.
I mean, you're still
and
in
I'm
therapy.
I still see a counselor,
therapy.
which I was in, and I chose to stay. Like, I mean, I've been in therapy throughout the entire time, because that's if you're in a decent medicated assisted therapy program, therapy is going to be part of it. I go to the doctor every month. I still get drug tested. I'm still held accountable for that. It's more lax the longer you're on it. You know, you prove yourself. But each time you have something come up, I mean, I went out of the country for 2 weeks. And in order for me to be able to go on vacation, I have to take my meds with me. If you abruptly stop these medications, you're going to go into the worst withdrawal and could have cardiac arrest. So, I mean, if they won't let you bring it to wherever you're going, your trip's over. Okay. So, I mean, you know, you're going to have to travel with it, and it's an inconvenience, and it can be a hassle at times. So it's something that you have to go into knowing, you got to have this, and you know that. And thankfully, the longer you're on it, you don't wake up sick. Once you get stable, you're able to kind of come through the fog, and you're not chasing all the time. You're able to do the work on yourself, because without that, it doesn't matter how you try to get into recovery. If you don't do that self-work, it's not going to last, because you have to work on that part of you.
So the mat was just taking care of the physical symptoms,
part,
because you do have health issues.
Because then I could focus on that.
But then you could focus on the real root issues.
Because then I was like, well, how did I get here? How did this happen? Because some people are like, I don't get addicted to anything. And I'm like, well, what was it? Like, what was the trigger? And they're like, anybody, even on a very short dose or prescription can get addicted. It's very scary, the research that they've done, how short of a prescription you can get, and how high the chances are that if you get a prescription by the end of that month, that they're going to be physically dependent. And so it's really caused doctors to get to where you really got to need it, and they're only going to write you like very few, because they do not want to be associated with that anymore. But unfortunately, they've left so many people in the wake of us just being bombarded by as many pills as we could get, and then by then it's done. Like, you've got to try to put your life back together from that, because it's unreal the amount of medicine you used to be able to get, and now whenever I go into the doctor or have something happen, I have to tell them, and it's going to affect the kind of care you're going to get. Like, you have to be like, I'm a recovering addict. I'm on MAT. I can't have narcotics. Like, I've had doctors write me a prescription for narcotics with me telling them I'm an addict. And thankfully I got the willpower not to go feel that, and be honest, because there's people that don't, and there would have been a time I wouldn't have been strong enough, to be honest about it. But, it's finally, I had to come to grips in a lot of therapy and working through that it's not a flaw in the fact if I do have to be on this the rest of my life, and sure, everybody wishes they could be healthy enough to never have to be on any medicine, but that's not very realistic, know, and it doesn't matter, if I'm doing what I need to do, and it doesn't make me less of a person. I work my recovery very hard, and I know that every day it's a choice for me to take this medicine that helps keep me on the right path. It's a choice. If I chose something different, then it would be totally different. My life would be in total shambles in a matter of no time, but thankfully, if you really want it, you can earn that trust back, that self-respect back. You can get people to trust you again. It takes some work. And, I told him, I said, I know that I have just blew up every ounce of trust and faith y'all have in me, but I'm going to work to get that back, and one of the biggest collateral damages of my addiction was my marriage. Me and Travis, really, most people would not have come back from where we were. And it's like, I don't want to throw away 14 years of marriage, and our daughter and how long we've been together, and us both being so stubborn, I think. Yeah. I was like, it was not easy, he didn't trust me. I didn't trust him. There was a lot of anger, and for him not to immediately get scared that I was going to, revert right backwards, for me not to, throw up in his face everything he'd ever done or said. Because, you really just have to decide, we're going to move forward or we're not, and I thought, I don't want this to ruin a lifetime of what we've tried to build, and thankfully he stuck with me and had faith in me when I didn't have faith in myself, because everybody told him, hit the road. Like, you don't deserve this. You can do better. She's a lost cause. And if he had listened, we would not be together today, and our son would not exist, and I honestly, once I got my stuff together, I thought, wow, like most people would have hit the road. So, and I couldn't blame him if he did, because I just demolished our life, and he didn't. And thankfully, I've got to respect him for that. And I really had to apologize to him, because, I really made a mess out of things. And he worked so hard, and he stuck with me, and I'm really grateful, because now today, through all that.
So what does it look like now?
Now we'll be married 20 years this July. And so that's been, 6 years ago, and now it feels like a lifetime ago, and there's been so much life happened. We moved, we started over in a new place, took a huge chance, got rid of all of our stuff, put our stuff in a van, and really just started over and roll the dice, and it's like, I felt like there's so many triggers in our hometown, even though I was working my recovery and I felt secure in it. It's like everywhere I looked, there was some kind of bad, tainted memory with some place or somebody, and it was just always right there in the back of my mind. So I felt like it can't hurt for us to try to start
move somewhere else. Yeah.
So we did. And really, we took a huge chance. We didn't have jobs when we moved here. But we're pretty tenacious. He was in the military, so we were used to starting over. It's like, let's just do it. And it ended up being for the best, because he has found a job that he's worked at for 5 years. He's been promoted. He's done so well loves what he does. Our daughter has flourished. My mom, I decided, she got into recovery too. Her marriage ended, and she has been so great to me and such an awesome parent to me. I want to be able to be there for her through her retirement. I want her to be able to enjoy her retirement and help take care of her in the way that she's been there for me. And so she actually lives with us, which would not work for most people, but it's an interesting dynamic, but it works for us.
She's awesome.
She's so laid back, and she's Travis's biggest fan. She's unlike most
mother-in-laws. She can come live with me.
Yeah, Hope will take her.
I'll take her.
Yeah, everybody calls her Nanny. She's even Nanny to Hope's kids. So, but her and him, she's never gotten in the middle and in her,
she's just even killed. She's even like killed. So good. Like, I'm like, you're just like, she just listens.
She does. She's a listener.
She's just so gracious.
She doesn't take sides, which is a big thing. She'll listen to us vent, but she stays like Switzerland and lets us work our problems out, because she knows that if we're going to work it out, and if she tries to take sides, we're not going to forget what she says. So by her just being there, they're going to be mad at her. So like, I love her. She loves him like a son. She knows, every marriage is going to have its ups and downs. So she just listens and just lets us do her thing. And, it really works out, because she has her space. We have ours. She's able to be there for my kids, which I wouldn't trade for anything, because she is honestly the most incredible grandmother. And we're so blessed to have her there all the time, because, she spoils them rotten way more than she spoiled me.
Yeah.
But they're so awesome. They're so blessed to have that, because I've lived in a way to where you are so far from your family. Like when my oldest was young, we were in a total different state, so she missed out on a lot when she was small.
But she loves it
But now they're like glued to the hip and they're best friends, and she is respectful of letting us parent and our rules. So, for most people, I could never live with my mother-in-law, and I get that, because it would never work in any other set of circumstances.
Yeah, this is a special, because I'm like, I don't know how. And then, but when you meet Nanny and you're around her, it makes sense.
Because I'm like, I couldn't live with my husband's mother. Like, that would never work. He couldn't live with his mother. So I totally get it. But we're really lucky that, because of how long we've been in each other's lives forever, there's a mutual respect. And she loves him, he loves her, which is so nice. Being in between them, I'm really, really blessed in that way. And that means my kids are able to have this third adult in their life all the time. And I told her, I say, no, you've been in our corner from day one.
Yeah.
When nobody else thought we would make it. She went through all of that craziness with us. And I mean, and she did, she's had her ups and downs too. But she managed to stay there and love us through all of that, and even when I was like, don't call him, like, she didn't get involved. She wanted us to make it work, and was praying that we would come out on the other side. And, I can say we've been married longer than like basically anybody else we know, and we did. We got married really young, and it's work. You got to want to be married at this point. I mean, we've been together 24 years, been married 20, and you just got to want to be together, because it's work. I mean, we're totally different people today. We've lived a whole life, and we were kids. We didn't know nothing. We didn't know that at the time. We thought we knew everything, but I mean, we were just in love, and we wanted to make it, and we were willing to work it out and stick with it. And I'm like, there's been many times where the easier option would have been to hit the road and get divorced. But I think, most people, anybody can get through the easy stuff. But what makes it is if you can get through the hard times, because life has a way of just kicking you in the butt. And I mean, it's easier to not deal with it. It's easier just to default. But people do. They get married too quick and they get divorced too easy, And I told them, I said, I want to be here because I want to be here. I said, you want to be here because you do. I said, I can't say that I am against divorce, because there's people that just should not be married. But I believe if you're going to go that route, you should have tried everything. You should be able to say, I gave it 100%, especially if you have kids. And if they come to you and was like, and they have questions, you should be able to say, we really wanted to make it work and we tried, but then we just couldn't, and at this point, our kids are 10 years apart. We started over. We're crazy. Okay? We're nuts. Like, we started over. So we've got a teenager and a toddler, and we're just in survival mode most of the time, And
I think y'all made a commitment to one another early, early in your lives, you made a commitment to one another, and you've kept that.
I took it serious. I think too. And most people, they don't know what they want, at that age. I think because of the set of circumstances, like we both come from divorced parents. We both come from broken homes. Both of our dads really wasn't in the picture. We wanted something different. Okay. And we knew it wasn't going to be easy. We knew we weren't setting out on an easy path, to be that young, that kind of commitment. And then adding him being in the military active duty was putting a whole nother added stress on it. But it's like, I want to be married. I want to be with you. And I want to make this work. And it's not going to be easy, and we're going to be broke, and it's going to take effort. But, it's got to be 100 and 100. And even still today, because people are like, it's 50, and it's not. Like, if you got life and finances and kids, it's 100. Because if one of you doesn't want to be there or isn't putting the work in, it's going to be a ripple effect. It's going to affect everything. And, at the core of it, I don't want to be the type of person that's like two ships passing in the night. This whole family got started from me and him. And at one of these days, these kids are going to be grown, and it's going to be me and him. And I don't want to be looking at him like, I don't know you and you don't know me. So I want to we've been able to keep that friendship We actually enjoy
that's a staple part of it.
And even when we get mad and frustrated and drive each other crazy, at the end of the day, we are friends, and he's my best friend. He makes me laugh. I make him laugh. We drive each other up the wall, but we built a whole lifetime together, and I, thankfully, most people would not last. Most people that are with their high school boyfriend, they don't last, so the odds were really against us, and I think, though, that I'm so blessed that the Lord put us together, because I don't know how I would have gotten through everything that has happened in my life without people that actually, really love you, even at your worst or your best, and I'm grateful, every day. It did take a lot of work, because there was a lot of damage done, for me and him, and at the end of the day, we come out stronger on the other side, and we were together. We made a decision to have a baby just a few years later, and it's like, now we've signed up for another 18 years. Like, here we go again. But, it's fun. I mean, we're older this time, so it's different. This boy's got so much energy. I was in my early 20s when I was going through my mother phase with my daughter, and I'm like, woo! I'm like, here we are, 3 adults. But he's either going to keep us young or kill us. So, but he's been a surprising blessing, and I think to myself, I didn't think it was even going to be possible to mother, any more children. So he has been the greatest gift that has come out of that, because there was a time in my life where I thought, I couldn't look forward to anything. So I like to think, even though, because for me, it wasn't easy to get pregnant either time. I battled infertility issues. And so I thought this was a little gift, that God said, okay, and I was like, that was such a blessing, because I thought it wasn't going to be possible to have anymore. And so every day, I can't even remember what life was like before him, and so seeing my daughter get to be a big sister, after being an only child for so long. So, and now it feels like that time in my life was so long ago, and it feels like a totally different lifetime, but I'm humbled by it, because I never want to forget where I was, and how bad it got, because that keeps you,
you don't
wanting to be there on the right path.
Yeah, you don't live there, but don't forget about it. That's how I am. Like, I don't live in that place, but I don't forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I want it to always be just up on the shelf, to where I can remember and be grateful for how far I've come, because I think, I'm able, for a long time, I couldn't put it out of my mind. It overshadowed me, because I just had to deal with the internal struggle of realizing what I had been through, what I had done, and the shame, and finally working through that, and I think that's a big part in the growth of recovery. It took a long time, because it would hit me like in waves. I'd be like, I don't deserve this, and finally I was like, no, I'm human.
I do deserve this.
And I made mistakes, and, it was bad, and I have a lot of regrets, but I'm not that person, and I'm not that in that place.
Right.
I deserve happiness, and I'm working hard to be the best version of myself, and I think if you can say, I'm legitimately sorry for my mistakes, and work as hard as you can to be a better person and do the right things, then you can forgive yourself. Forgiving yourself is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Everybody forgave me long before I forgave myself, and I think, that's the one thing, the gift that I just finally had to say, you are worth good things, like,
I think that is the biggest thing, because sometimes I would be like, maybe I don't deserve it.
I'd just be waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah, like something bad's going to happen.
Things are too good right now. Like, I look at how much I messed up, like I don't. And then finally I got to the place where I was like, I'm not an awful person. That doesn't make me, a horrible person. I made mistakes, and everybody does. Yeah. And I mean, just because I did that and experienced that and was at the lowest part of my life, I did better, and I do better today. And, I shouldn't beat myself up and guilt myself for the rest of my life, and I think for me, I mean, everybody's trust and, their faith in me returned quicker than I could have faith in myself. And finally, I felt like I deserved that, So once I kind of got there, I felt like I could actually be honest with myself. And that kind of come with being honest about everything I've been through, because for a long time I didn't want to admit it, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to open up. And I thought, I haven't reached that place until I could talk about it and be like, this is my story. And it ain't pretty, and I'm not proud of it, but it is part of who I am. And I have to just embrace that. And I can either, shove it in the closet and be ashamed of it, or I can embrace that it made me who I am, and hopefully it can help somebody else, and because I know a lot of people are in the same situation, and
absolutely,
definitely. So, I mean, and I'm so grateful, because when I moved here, she was like one of the first friends I made. We didn't tell each other right away. And then when we did, it was like a light bulb. It's like, now I get it. Like we're kindred spirits. We get each other, And so I'm so glad, because if she's having a time or I'm having a time, we could just talk and vent, and that is priceless, being able to have that. And so that's why when she told me, I was like, I've got to come do this, because
I'm so happy
I'm so glad we did,
I'm proud of you, though. I know that it's this is kind of like a stepping,
it
growth,
is
a form of growth for you to actually come on here and share it.
Because I have shared it, but not on this level.
Yeah.
And really, for years, my husband's told me, he was like, you need to do something in recovery. He said, because he said, you can talk to people. He said, you don't judge people. And especially when I went through everything with my pregnancy, and it was kind of, I wish I'd had that, because I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody, and I felt like I couldn't relate to anybody. And he was like, if your doctor's office does anything, he said, there's other women in the same exact situation.
Yes.
And he said, I really think you should do this. And I'm like, but you doubt yourself for a long time. You're like, I don't know,
I told her she needs to get peer specialist certified.
Yeah, absolutely.
She can jump right into
and
it.
I've been like on the jumping off place, like for the last 3 years, because he told me, he was like, I'm not going to lie to you. He said, and I really think you would be incredible at this. He said, and not only that, he said, I think it would be really fulfilling for you.
I think
it would.
He said,
it would.
He said, yes, I think you'd be a great help to others. He said, but I think it would be very fulfilling for you. It just feels good to give back.
Yeah. It's mutually beneficial.
I love to help other people.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you're good at it, though. I think you are wonderful at telling your story, and you also are just very empathetic. Yeah. You understand, and you could definitely. So that I'm gonna hold you accountable.
Yeah,
actually,
I definitely.
I've already been texting her like, this is what you're doing.
Yeah,
so get on board. I said, I'll do it with you.
Yeah, let's do it together. I do think,
you really should.
I'm really, I finally reached a place where I was like, because for a long time you think, who would I inspire, or why would I do it? And I'm like, that's
so many people.
So many people.
And I know that's we're our own worst critic.
Yeah.
We always self-doubt ourselves. And I'm like, I got so much out of anybody who's come into my life and been open and vulnerable enough to be honest, because I've learned that nobody, it doesn't matter who they are, everybody has a story, and it's usually the last thing you would expect.
Yeah.
So it's like, everybody has their own story, and it's like, I've got a story to share, and I know there's a lot of women that are in the same boat. There's a lot of people that went down the path of addiction just like I did, and found their life in the same place from a legitimate start, and then they didn't think they would ever go down that path, and they didn't plan it. It just happened, and so, everybody kind of gets to that on their own path, but I think honestly, with women, especially, being brave enough to be vulnerable and honest about it is only going to help other people do it, and it took a long time to get there, because everybody, I will talk about it openly now, but it took, in the beginning, it would be like, I just felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest, because it's like, once you say it and put it out there, it's there. And I mean, it's really making it real, and it's like, finally it was a release.
I get that, though.
To be like, okay,
we try to hide. We're ashamed. So
we're ashamed.
I remember when when I first started trying to get clean, like I would get so furious when I thought my mom was telling anybody that I was even drinking too much. Like, how dare her?
It's not your business.
Like, yes,
and then
not your business.
They're always going to look at me that way, and it's like you finally embracing it. It makes it real.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make it real. You can't go back now. It's out there, and I'm like, it's part of my story. It doesn't matter how long I'm in recovery. I'm going to have to work it every day, because like my husband has a hard time calling me an addict. And I told him, I said, look, it doesn't offend me. Okay. I said, I am no better than anybody else. I said, I did what I did. I had made those mistakes. I said, I know you have a hard time verbalizing that. I said, but you need to accept it. I've accepted it. I'm not proud of it.
I mean, it maybe with him just using the word "were."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You word that because that's not who you are.
I'm recovering.
Yeah, that's not who you are today.
I know. I guess it's sometimes just the word,
the verbiage.
Because I remember I had the hardest time in the beginning just saying like, hey, I'm an alcoholic. Yeah. But once I did, it became like, I remember being in when I was at work going in there saying her name, and I came this close to being like, hey, I'm hoping I'm an alcoholic. I mean, this is when I was going to meetings religiously. And so I was just so used to it. But now I don't really, I just say I'm in recovery. Yeah. Because like, I know that, given a bad decision, I could be right there, but I obviously I'm not there, and I'm in recovery.
I told Travis, I said, it's taken ownership of it. I said, because for a long time, before you make the decision, you dance around it. You're like, I'm going through a hard time, or I'm whatever, or you're making every other excuse. I said, but you finally have to reach a place of admittance to where I'm at this place and I'm dealing with this and I have to fix it, and I told him, I said, forever, the difference is I'm not in active addiction. I'm not that person. I said, but that's going to be something I'm going to have to work on forever. I said, and I'm not ashamed of it. I said, so, and the growth that comes from it, it's the worst time of my life, but it brought me to a place. So if I had to go through all of that to be the woman I am today, then it was worth it, because
the way I look at it, as you saying that, is this: I have found freedom from addiction, and that's from God.
Yeah, 100%.
And I can sit here today and say I am free of addiction. Yeah. Yes, I am in recovery. Mm-hmm. And, I believe wholeheartedly, you can find freedom from it. Yeah. But I also know that you have to continue to put in the work. Yeah. And the way I am is, if I lose that connection with God, and I lose that part, then I'm headed down. Yeah. It may not happen overnight, but I'm on that
in that mindset.
So in order, so it's there. So I'm in recovery, and I do have freedom from it. But I think that you have to constantly, you have to put in that work to stay in that place, and that's why God calls us to have a relationship with Him.
Definitely,
like have a relationship. Come to me. You're gonna fall. You're gonna have mess ups, but He gives you that strength, to fill you back up.
Yeah, fill you back up, keep you, going back to Him. And I'm so grateful that there's been a community that's been built, because I feel like for a long time people suffered in silence. Like there was no, they didn't tell anybody. They were ashamed. They didn't voice it. And so a lot of people felt like they were just on their own, and so what I've been able to find is it definitely strengthened my prayer relationship, strengthened everything, because if I didn't have that in place, then I wasn't on the right path, because what I have found for me, and I don't think it matters which path you go down, those triggers of anxiety, anger, all of those things, if you don't stay working, keeping that in your mind, that I have to work on this to stay on this path, you immediately, when that triggers up, you want to numb that. You don't want to deal with it, so you have to find other ways to deal with the coping mechanism, because it's a knee-jerk reaction to do the easy thing, and that is the easier choice. Yeah. But the harder choice is to feel, and deal with all the, stress and the anger and all of that. And it's like, for a long time, I was like, the minute I would get mad or stressed out or whatever, I didn't want to feel it, didn't want to cope with it or whatever. And it's like, these are normal emotions, that everybody has, but you spend so long numbing them that you have to find a different way to cope with life, because that takes time.
That takes so much
it's
time.
Hard
because like our reaction is like, I don't want to deal with
this. Oh, I don't want to deal with that bill collector. Nope. And it's like, I would just get mad and immediately just didn't want to feel that.
They not get my money today.
Don't talk to me. I'm angry. And I would just shut down. And I'm like, I have it in me to just immediately, everybody has the triggers. And so for so long, I shut myself off from feeling anything. Then when I really come through the clouds, when I got into recovery, it was an avalanche of emotions and anxiety and all kinds of stuff that I just felt like was suffocating me, because I had numbed myself off from everything for so long. And literally it was like crushing. And I had to do a lot of therapy, because I was like, whoa, like I haven't felt anything, because I was so preoccupied with just trying to get through the day that I didn't think about anything else.
Yeah.
And when I actually had to start experiencing day-to-day life, and emotions and relationships and pouring into people, it was exhausting. And I'm like, I haven't felt anything in so long. Then I felt everything, like to the 10th degree. And I was like, holy cow, like how I would become really anxious. Like, so it did. I really done a number on myself. And over the course of 5 years, it's like, I just literally didn't cope with nothing. Didn't talk to anybody, didn't open up, didn't feel anything. And it was awful. Like, and at first I wanted to run from it.
Even in the past like 2 years, which I've known you for, how old is
been about,
I've known you for
4
3,
almost. Yeah.
Almost 4 years.
You met him when he was like 9 months old? Yeah. He was right before he started walking, like right before he turned 1. So, and with the growth of it, I think, because I had to really do a lot of self. And when I knew I was going to be a mom all over again, and I was like, wow, okay, because my daughter was 9, and we were starting over, and we'd only been back together a couple of years. And I was like, I got a lot of work to do, because I'm like, he deserves what version of me my daughter got at that age, and I'm like, I'm not that same person. I've had a lot of stuff happen. And I'm like, the only way I'm going to be what he deserves is if I work on this. I can push it down and ignore it, or I can really get uncomfortable and work through all of that, and because if I hadn't of, he wouldn't get the version of me that he really deserves, because I was like, it's not fair, for him to get this version and his sister get this version who hadn't dealt with that, and was carefree and had never had any of that stuff happen. And I was like, it is what it is. It's part of me, but I can face it, and the only way it's going to get better and I'm going to be able to carry it and it not just totally affect me in every aspect is to cope with it and accept it, and it wasn't easy, to be honest. It wasn't easy to go back to your childhood trauma and all of that, but it really did. I think what really made it so easy for me to fall into that was because I didn't feel loved as a child, I felt loved as for my mom, but my dad was not there for me. He was older. He was 40 when I was born. He had been married before, had kids before. So really emotionally, he was done raising kids. Yeah. And then he married my mom and she was like, I have no children. I'm going to have at least one. And he was older and had already been through that part of his life. But by that point, he loved her. So he was like, it's either that or she was not going to marry him. She was like, you had kids. I've not. But really inside, he shouldn't have had any more because he was done. He was emotionally shut off. So even when he was there, I got the version of him that was just going through the motions, and really because of his drinking, I knew that he blamed me for everything wrong in their marriage, everything wrong in their life. And he told me he wished I was never born. I didn't deal with it. And we didn't deal with it. So, I was like, I'm just going to bury it. Don't care. I don't care what happens to him. I don't need him. So I tried to be the strong, young, independent woman, and then once I became vulnerable and sick And once I got led down that road, it like was able to fill up that part of me that was not filled up, and as much as I didn't want to admit it, it was in my DNA to become so easily dependent on anything, and I mean, and it happens so fast,
I mean, it's genetics.
It does have a lot to do with it. I think it can be fought in some ways.
It can be,
but I think it does. It's really hard.
I mean, it's definitely can be avoided.
Yeah. I mean, and then
but as a child of an alcoholic, your chances of getting into addiction is significantly higher.
And I can say I've been lucky. I've never had alcohol's never been an issue for me. I've told Hope my hat goes off to her and any other alcoholic because I'm telling you, it's everywhere. I told her, I said, it is in your face constantly. And it takes some amount of willpower. It's in a restaurant, it's in the grocery store. They sell it 7 days a week. You can get it everywhere, And I mean, it really takes a lot because, I mean, if that was the case, if it was on every corner, I mean, man, I understand it a lot more on this side, because I was like, why can't he just stop if you don't want to do it, And it's like, but to each individual person, it's so unique. And I mean, literally,
that's it. Then.
I didn't think for a long time. It took a long time, but I mean, I can tell you today, I feel like I could literally have a bottle of pills in my house and not even care, but for a long time. Yeah. Not even care. But it wasn't always that way. I mean, my husband just had surgery, and I mean, but it took a long time to get to that place. And I think it's because I had to work through all of those things that made me escape.
Yes. I mean, when you take away the need to escape.
I'm so different in that aspect.
Just be like,
not that in the aspect, but I am I don't want it in my house.
Yeah.
I don't want it near me. Mm-hmm. To me, it is like, it takes a different form.
Yeah.
Like I can't explain it, but like, I know that there's a very significant amount of pain that is related to that.
Yeah.
And definitely. I don't want it near me.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know. Like I just feel like it like all of a sudden I feel like
physical reaction.
I feel like this emotion to this. Like I don't know what it is, but like don't have it around me. Like it.
Well, you said it. Yeah. You said it. You said it's pain attached to it.
Yeah.
It's I guess painful. I did. Okay.
Yeah. So that definitely makes sense.
It's like that pain and like I don't want to go back there. So don't.
Yeah, and I respect it in a way to where I know that it has a power over me that I have to admit. Okay. Yeah. I gave it that power, but it has a power over me and I know what it will do to me. So I mean, I can, be like, oh, I'd be fine. I would not. Okay. Like I know that. And it took a long time to admit that, that you have to get to a place where you're like, I'll never be able to go there again because it can't happen. Some people they can limit it and whatever. And there's some people that just cannot do that. And I'm one of those people, I know that if I don't stay really true with myself and work on my recovery and keep it front and center, that everything else falls apart, and the medication is only part of it. It's not a quick fix all. It's not a magic bullet, and for me, thankfully, for the last 6 years, it's been able to manage my pain and keep me stable and keep me off a slew of other medications, and it's not a miracle cure because I'm not ever going to be without pain and without issues. And as I get older, it's going to get worse. They told me that. But it's manageable. I'm not totally up and down. I'm not throwing my life away because I'm unable to function. It makes me to a functional level where I can actually enjoy life because unfortunately I'm never going to completely be without pain, and I never understood chronic pain until I experienced it. And
well, I'm glad you're sharing.
It's really hard. It's a very depressing thing.
It's misunderstood.
I don't experience that, but like from knowing
you can relate.
Like like you've made me actually because prior to having this friendship with you, I kind of was more not judgmental, but kind of like, well,
if they wanted to, they could, whatever.
But after my friendship and seeing you and having like knowing your story and like your path, just going more into recovery and just being and doing the education and reading about it, I've learned that there's not just one way to get sober.
Everybody's way, and what I tell people, what works for me may not work for them. And I would never tell somebody, yes, go get on medicated assisted therapy. It's got to be for their particular reason. And there's some people that it's not the right path for them.
I mean, because I told you it wouldn't be for me.
If they had a way, if they didn't deal with underlying health issues and they would be able to stop and all they wanted to do was get high, okay, the cons of being on it wouldn't be worth it. Okay. It'd be better to go through a short-term, withdrawal than knowing that you're going to get on something that's going to be very hard to get off and that you're really going to have to be strict on, because it does. It affects all of these different aspects on surgeries, all these things in the future. Like, when you get on it, number one, on that national database, you're going to be listed for life. I mean, you're giving that up. That's hard. Okay. A lot of people know, they're like, I don't know what happens 30 years from now, but it's going to be there. And no matter where I go, that label follows me. Okay. So that was hard to be like, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be labeled an addict no matter how good I do, no matter where I'm at, no matter what I accomplish, where I get to, I know that, because I know my past choices, it's going to follow me forever. And that was one of the reasons my mom had such a hard time, because she's like, what if I'm able to get off in a year or two? It's a hard choice to make. And because you feel like you're a lesser than a lot of times, like, why can't I just do it?
But I think when you're looking at your, hearing your story, and you're looking at like you said, everybody's unique. Everybody's path is different. And your why is different from your mom's why.
Yeah.
And so, like, would you say that having the understanding that the underlying condition played a huge part in why you became addicted in the first place, and the surgery, because your gut was rewired
totally. So it affects how you,
affects your
tolerance is higher,
brain.
You burn stuff off a lot faster. Because I could not understand. I was like, I'm so small. Like, how can I take so much? And they were like, once I got into recovery, literally, I didn't even know this, but like years before, when my daughter was born, they could not get me out of pain when I was in labor. Like, and a lot of pain medications did not work for me. They would not work. And everybody's chemistry is so different. And I have an extremely high pain tolerance. So once I started on medication, it was like I was off to the races, because I could never get enough. Like, they weren't ever going to be able to prescribe me enough. It built so quick, because one would work and then it didn't. And
that's one of the factors that
gets out of control quick.
Into addiction is when you have that higher tolerance.
Yes. And I hate it
because my brain doesn't indicate me, okay, you're sick. My brain indicates me like when I'm about to die. Like, not like, hey, like, like most people would drink and get drunk and say, I don't want to touch that again.
I'm good.
I'm like, oh no, like, give me the most.
I want all of it.
I want all of it.
And I really figured this out, because it really come full circle to me when I went into labor with my son, because my kids were 10 years apart. They were like, look, it's going to be like you've never even had a baby. Okay. You're starting all over. Your body's not going to remember anything. So I'm like, okay, well, I carried him full term. Okay. And I mean, I'm like, all right, I was going to go in and be induced. Well, that weekend before I went into labor, and I had been having Braxton Hicks and all that, I stayed home in the bed eating a ham sandwich until I was 5 centimeters dilated. When I was 5 centimeters dilated with my daughter, I thought I was going to die. Okay. And I was begging for an epidural. And I got all the way to the hospital, waited for the anesthesiologist to come in. He comes in at 7.5 centimeters. And I'm like, you might as well leave, because we've missed the boat. I know I'm having this baby natural. No epidural. I know that. because you got such a small window of time to get it. And I know I can't have nothing else. Like, they can't give me anything by IV. And even if there was anything they could have, I was progressing so fast that anything they could have given me, Stadol or anything, to take the edge off, could have depressed the baby's breathing. I was too close to delivering because, I mean, we were shocked. I mean, I was like, y'all told me this was going to take forever. And I mean, I got to the hospital at like 5 a.m. and my son was born at 9:20. And I mean, it went so quick. And that was my biggest fear in life that I had to overcome during that pregnancy, because I was so afraid of unmedicated childbirth. I was like, holy cow. I had a very dramatic delivery with my daughter and a long labor. My labor was 21 hours. She come out fast, but it was traumatic. Like, I had tearing. It was scary, and I almost bled to death. And I was like, it was taking me right back there. So I was like, I wasn't afraid of delivering. I was afraid of the after effect. Because if I had to not be numb and feel that with my first, I can't imagine. Like, it was very traumatic. And I was thinking the whole time, I was just praying, please, like, don't let this be anything like that. That's why I was like, I want epidural. And then that was off the table. Like, there was no option. So I was facing my biggest fear. I was like, they're like, this baby's coming. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to have it. He's going to stay in there. Okay. And they're like, no, he's coming. And we can do this. I'm like, we aren't doing anything. Y'all are watching. And I don't think I can. Okay. And they're like, yes, you can. And I mean, I did. I mean, I was so scared because I thought, no way. I don't need to know. I don't need to be Superwoman. My hat's off to them, but I don't want to. And I had to overcome that at the cost of my addiction, because they tried to give me the epidural, but it probably failed because of the medicine I'm on. And I knew that. Like, I had to tell myself in my head, this might happen. Okay. They told me that there's a very good chance. Some women, they get lucky and it works, but it might not. Okay. Even if we're able to get it placed, you need to be prepared. And so I went in thinking, okay, I'll be able to get in the tub. I'll be able to do it. Nope. It just all happened out of my control. And I was like, whoa, like, this is my worst fear coming to. And I mean, that really, when I got through that, because of how intense it was, I thought, if I can get through that, there is no amount of pain that I could have to face in life that I can't get through after that. You know, if I have to do surgery, yes, it's going to hurt. And I'll have to have my teeth pulled, and that will be tough, but I can get through it, you know. And it's been tough being young, you know, having a perfect smile, losing my teeth because of a medication that I have to take, you know. And it would have been nice to know, because it didn't tell us, you know. Would it have changed anything? Probably not, because I was pretty desperate at the time. Yeah. But, you know, it happened so quickly. And now, you know, I'm probably going to be able to keep my bottom ones, but I am going to have all of my top teeth pulled, and then eventually all of my bottom teeth. And it's from the dry mouth. You know, you just can't keep that from happening, no matter if you use medicated mouthwash or not. So on the flip side, you know, I'm having to deal with that. But at the end of the day, they're just teeth, you know. And I mean, it is what it is. You know,
can get more, so you can get some more.
You know,
you can purchase
that's
something.
Been difficult, because in my line of work, looks are important, you know, and it's people judge you in the first 5 seconds by how you look before they ever get to know you, you know. And I mean, it's been hard, because when your life is better, you feel better, you want to smile. But then you don't feel like you can smile. And then you get mad because you're like, I did this to myself. So it's literally like, it's like, no.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, though, because I think even you're just like, but my smile. But I don't even notice. Like, I'm like, I don't even notice.
I'm able to distract from it a lot. And the back ones I really don't care about. But the pregnancy also, my surgery, because you absorb vitamins differently. Me having a pregnancy in my mid-30s after the surgery, having Wyatt really did a number on my teeth. They were not good before, but the calcium, I mean, he literally just took everything, because with bypass, I mean, they take so much of your intestine, they cut your stomach down, so you're already not getting, but then when you're pregnant, you're taking so many vitamins, but they're really going to the baby. So, I mean, they just deplete you. And then I was 33 when he was born. So, I mean, it literally, what little bit of hope I had for my teeth, they were so brittle that they just break. I mean, at nothing. He was sitting on my lap one day and put his head back and broke my front tooth just right off. And so when I went to the dentist, they try to talk me out of it. Let's do this, and it's a lost cause, because honestly, I know that my mom worked in a dentist office. I could go in and go through a lot of pain and a lot of money for them trying to restore one at a time, but they're going to go bad again because of my surgery. I'm deficient in the malabsorption, aside from the dry mouth. I'm going to waste a lot of money for no reason. So I would rather do something that's not going to be a total waste of time. And then we did think we were going to have to do them all at once, but I think they say the top is worse than the bottom. So if the top ones, at least if I can get that done, I should be able to buy some time on the bottom ones, because for some reason, and I think they said it's because of the way your tongue sits, because my dry mouth is very severe. And it drives me up the wall. I can't go anywhere without something to drink and store. I mean, I get so thirsty. And so they're like, yeah, but the bottom part of your mouth is where your tongue sits. So the top is where the most damage is done. And I'm like, they really need to be telling people and labeling this on the box, because I was never told that there would even be a possibility that I could suffer catastrophic tooth loss if I take this medication. And they just didn't say anything. And I didn't find out about it till I had already been on it for several years and the damage was already done. And by then, I mean, they're just breaking. I mean, left and right. You go from having no decay to every tooth bombing in your head. And so I really feel like, a lot of people feel bad about that too, because it's like they have a perfect smile, and then that's a sacrifice that you have to make, and so, I mean, I wouldn't change anything because the pros are worth it. But, that is one thing that I'm having to deal with the repercussions of now, because unfortunately I'm going to have at least all my top ones out relatively soon. And I hate the dentist. I hate the drill. I hate dental pain. So I put it off because I'm not a baby when it comes to pain, except dental pain.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I hate it. And normally I'm like, knock me out. Like if I can't stand to hear the drill in my head, it gives me major anxiety. So, I mean, I'm a wimp when it comes to that. I can have a baby 100% with nothing, but I'm like, I don't want to feel a thing. So I'm going to have to overcome that and probably have somebody hold my hand. But it's on my bucket list this year. I've been making excuses, taking care of everybody else. I'm going out of the country. Well, now that's done. This year I'm going to do it, because it needs to happen. I need to be a brave big girl.
You're going to do it.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, you can do it. Like, remind yourself you had a baby.
I can be strong, be a woman, and I know that once I do, just this being able not to be in pain, not to feel like, be genuinely happy and feel like you can, exude that happiness without being worried about your smile, because I am, I've tried to carry myself to the best of my ability, but you don't want to smile and people be like, you don't look like somebody that would have all these broken teeth. And I'm like, so it takes people back, and then if you do, you feel like they're looking at your mouth and not you. So I haven't worked.
I don't actually look at it because I'm like, she's like, but I'm like, I don't even notice your smile, girl. But I don't. Yeah. I mean, I thank goodness, but I honestly, I don't notice things like that. Normally about people.
I don't know if I just feel like I'm overly observant, but I'm hypercritical of it in my mind,
But I think too, like, because she knows you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not about you.
I don't see your teeth. That's right.
You don't.
Because you know me, and it's not.
I don't even like. To me, I'm like, I don't even. I'm like, does it even show?
Yeah,
and honestly,
it would.
If
I smiled just in the last 8 months or so, has it really? And I talked to my dentist. It's because my teeth have gotten so brittle from being pregnant, because I had no idea that they could break so easily, like just barely by, because I'm real conscious about what I eat, because you need to go in and have all this dental work done, but then literally just barely hitting me in the mouth with the back of his head just chipped 2 of my teeth off, one right here in the front. I've lost this tooth completely. I've lost this tooth completely. And this has all been within just the last couple of months. So, I mean, they were not great, but then they've gotten to the point where it's like not is visible, 100% visible.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to have to go in and do it. And it's going to be a big undertaking. And I need to just have them all out all at the same time, you know. But I'm like, you're going to have to give me some immediate dentures because unfortunately, I wish I could go in and just get all new implants, but can't afford that, you know. So I'm like, it's expensive. And, you know, when I go in, they're telling me it ain't that bad. Let's try it until they get in there and see it. And I'm like, would you want to go through that pain when you know down the line, you're just going to be right back here, you know? So I told them, like, I want to be happy and comfortable with my smile. You know, I've worked hard to get to a happy place in life. So that's like the final chapter of what I need to do, you know. And of course, as women, we take care of everybody else, you know, and if it's something you're not particularly fond of, you put it off, you know.
Yeah.
But I need to finally just make it a priority, you know, and do it. And, you know, getting the referrals and the insurance and all that, it's hard. Like down here, I don't know about everywhere else, but these dentists book out months in advance. I mean, it can be hard to get in for one tooth.
And
I mean, it's not easy to get in to get it done, you know. And then I'm like, I know I need to do it, and I definitely want to do it before I go back to work, you know, because I've stayed home and taken care of my little boy. He's our last child, and I've loved every minute of that, you know, because it's priceless to have those first, you know. But he's almost old enough for preschool, you know, so it's going to be time for me to get back in the world and do things, you know, that make me happy and fulfill me. And I'm like, you know, I want to be able to put my best foot forward and not be in my mind self-conscious about it, you know, because I feel like because of it, it takes me back to all of that stuff I did. And I'm like, I can't look in the mirror without being faced by it because it correlates with each other, you know. So it's a book I need to close. You know, because I used to smile all the time and had perfect teeth. And then they didn't go bad until I got better. So, I mean, it's like, dang, you know. But it's
you think about like it's a scar that you have.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, and it's too like if that's what you feel like you need to do for you know for you, absolutely, you know, definitely do that. But as far as others are concerned,
don't worry about
it. You know,
and I mean, overall,
like, you know, because
I mean, it's been 11 years since I had my surgery. I've been very blessed to be able to keep the weight off. Even through my pregnancy, I gained 45 pounds, which was right what my doctor wanted me to gain. Lost it within just a couple of months. Was really scared when I got pregnant again because I had been so long since I gained weight that it was scary to see the scale going back up, even though I knew that I needed to gain some weight. But, you know, I know a lot of people that it's definitely same thing. It's something that it's a tool that you've got to work. If you don't take it seriously, then it's easy to put weight back on, you know. So, I mean, even though I was young when I had it done, it's lifelong effects, you know, I knew that this was not reversible, that it was going to affect the rest of my life, you know. And the two paths probably weren't the greatest, you know, to be in addiction and be post-surgery. But if, you know, it is what it is. I'm glad. I don't regret having the surgery. For a while I did because I got really angry because I thought that the surgery made me sick. You know, I can't say that. It is what it is, you know. I wasn't happy before, you know. I was obese. I wasn't healthy. I tried to lose it so many times and I battled my way all throughout my adolescence. So I knew I was doing it for the right reasons. One just happened to happen after the other, you know, and I got really angry because then I felt awful, even though I was thin, you know. But now
you're like, dang, I finally got skinny, and this ain't making me happy.
I was like, I should be the healthiest I've ever been, and I'm not happy, and I feel awful, you know. So I mean, for a while I had a lot of self-loathing and having to deal with the fact that I chose that elective surgery, and that one happened after the other. But now I'm glad, you know, once I figured out that I can't blame that. I could have gotten sick either way, you know, like couldn't say one way or the other. So, you know, it just happened to happen that way. Luck of the dice, you know, and thankfully I've been able to stay healthy, keep the weight off, and not gain it back. But it is a choice, because you get to a point where Snickers and milkshakes will go down just as easy as anything else. So you really got to work through that too, because I mean, most people, if they get to the point of having weight loss surgery, they also have a food addiction. So you have to work through that, and then.
Well, and I think that dealing with life, not dealing with the real underlying issue. That's what most of our problem is when we deal with anything, whether it's we watch too much television, or we buy shoes all the time, or whatever whatever the thing is that we're doing
in the moment.
Is for us to get to this place of okay. But the only way we're going to get to this place of okay is to deal with the thing that we keep trying to run from, which is like you were saying, in your case, it was you'd never felt loved by your father, like he was present and absent at the same time. So it's like when you
try to use everything else to feel better.
So when we don't deal with that, then we're prone to go to other things. And until we deal with that, and I really do believe, Ashley, that's a part, because you seem very well, the word determined is not what I'm looking for, but like you have the absolute capability to refrain. To go like, like I don't have to do that in excess. But I don't think you got to that point until you dealt with the root of the issues.
I think it was easier and quicker, and the self, like the immediate gratification of and plus admitting that I think I put up an armor. I gotta be strong. If he don't love me, whatever, my mom's an excellent parent. I'm going to overcome this and in spite of him, so, I mean, I really set off on this. I'm going to make it regardless of whether he cares about me or not. And I did really good at that for a long time, until that fork in the road when it just come right in my face.
Travis,
till you had to face it.
Up to you, he like triggered some of that past of your father,
definitely.
So that's when you were like, he will never get close to me again,
because he was an ally until he wasn't. Because I mean, literally, and I've told him, I've said, because of my childhood and the men that were not in my life, I'm surprised I was ever able to get married. Because literally, he didn't know it at the time, but he was working our whole life of knowing each other to building up that trust with him. And I mean,
That's
you
true.
Put him on a pedestal. And I think the minute that he stood up to me, or, it triggered something, because I very much have this mentality of, I don't need you. Okay. I can take care of myself. I've lived married, but lived single. I've held down before. I've taken care of everything. I don't need you, So I immediately have this part of me that just puts this wall up, and it's really hard to let it down, So I definitely keep people at arm's length,
because that was why it was easy for you to say, no, you can just go. Just go.
Go on.
Just go.
You
just go.
But I have a way, like, and so there's just some people that are made this way. Like I have, and it's to a fault almost. I'm brutally honest. Okay. So like when I get ready to know people, when I know people, I'm like, if you don't want to know, don't ask. Okay. Because I'm going to tell you. And so my family, I mean, I put them, because I only let certain people close, if they hurt me, it really hurts. And I mean, I can be pretty rough. So, I mean, I put him on such a pedestal and trusted him so much that when he turned on me, I just unleashed on him. And I mean, that's how so fast we were okay and then not.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if we can, get back what we had, because it just imploded so bad. And I mean, it literally, we just had to want to. Because I think if we really both did, and I had to really decide, do I want to? Can I look at him? Can I trust him again? Because if I can't, I'm not going to go through the motions. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to me.
And you won't even now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I mean, I'm very honest, like I tell people, you're never going to have to wonder what I'm thinking. Okay. Like I tell him how I feel, and we can communicate. That's one good thing, but we both have a temper, and I mean, he's got his hands full with me, like, but he's a Marine. He's led people in combat. He has to have a strong woman that can, be there. Because if he didn't, it would never work.
Yeah.
Like if I was a little wilting flower, we would have never made it work. But he knows I'm going to tell him exactly like it is, and I'm not going to mix words. Mm-hmm. And he knows what he's going to get, I mean, I'll tell him, and he knows if I say this and you don't, I'm just going to tell you. Okay. And so literally when I was at my dark place, I think it was just so easy to just spew all that pain and disappointment right on him, and I was even shocked at what happened,
You're like, hold on just a second. Wow.
Like he's not leaving. Yeah.
I mean, just so quickly, how it's really crazy, because I mean, I think for so long I thought I'm fine, I'm okay, that don't affect me. It did. And I didn't realize that it did until it all had to come boiling to the surface. And, thank goodness that we had the foundation of being able to navigate that, because I'm telling you, it was not pretty for a long time. And I mean, we were on rocky, ground, and it's like it was right there, just waiting for the shoe to drop, and just trying to get back to being able to trust each other, and being like, can we overcome it to where it's not going to be our knee-jerk reaction to throw that right back in each other's face every single time anything, because I was like, I've really got to forgive him all the way for everything, no matter what he said to somebody, no matter what he did, no matter how bad he hurt me or made, and same thing with him, or we don't stand a chance, because at the end of the day, if it's not really, really there, we're just going through the motions, and it's just going to implode down the road, you know? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I did do it because I wanted to be able to tell our daughter we really did give it 100%, and I knew that it's so easily people turn to divorce. Like right now, I mean, a lot of my daughter's friends, her parents are not together, and so it's rare, and I thought, that's the easy way out. I can run, I can tell him, forget you, whatever, but I'm still going to be messed up whether he's here or not.
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, but we've been through so much, and at that point, I've spent almost my entire life with this man. So it's like, am I going to throw all of those years away, or am I really just going to try to make this work? Because, I mean, literally, I thought if anybody can, it's us, but we're going to really have to give it a legitimate shot. Yeah. And it took about 6 months for it not to be just right there under the surface,
one little thing.
Yeah, every little thing.
I want to say it so bad.
It was, I'm out of here, you're out of here. Like, I mean, it was just all the time, and it was exhausting. And like, finally, I was like, I need to be like, okay, can I live with you? Can I lay down a night with you? Can I stay with you in the future? Because if I am, I've got to find it in me to let that go.
You gotta let it go.
And I had to finally admit I was at fault.
Yeah, that's the hardest
put us there, okay? Yeah. I had to be like, he did that because I did this, and that was not easy.
No,
I mean, as a woman, as everything, admitting my part in it was not easy, and I knew that I had really grown and had a chance once I was able to say,
did that. Yeah,
he did that, but I did that, which made him do that.
Yeah,
and I'm sorry for that because I acted nuts, and he didn't deserve that. And I'm grateful that he stuck by me because it took a while. I was like, you said for better or worse, and it's like, you were your worst, woman. Like,
we've seen the worst.
I'm like, man, I couldn't have gotten much worse. Okay, and so but. After that, and I finally took some accountability for our life just being in shambles and pushing him to the absolute brink, then we were kind of able to turn the page and not start over, but be like, that happened and that's a bump in the road, but we're going to try to navigate the future and we're going to get past that, and we were able to get to a place where we don't even think about it. It's part of our story. We know that. but we were able to rebuild a trust and a future that we wouldn't have today if that hadn't happened. So, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm so glad that happened, but it really, on the other side of it, we were different people. We're stronger because of it.
So you're stronger.
Yeah.
So, and on the other side, it is, we were able to find peace and trust in each other, and now we have faced a lot of adversity, and it is something that should have broke us and probably would have for a lot of other people. But I know that for better, worse, whatever, he's there. And because he wants to be there,
Yeah.
I tried to push him away. Get out, get out, get out. He was like a boomerang.
He's
coming back. So I
finally
was like, okay, he loves me. And I think internally I knew that I was a hot mess. And I was like telling him, get out of here, but he just wouldn't go. The ship is sinking, save yourself. But he just wouldn't, and I mean, I watched my parents just run from each other as kids. I just couldn't click that he just really wanted to help me and see through all the mess that I was doing. And I mean, I tried to push him away, but he just wouldn't. And so thank goodness he didn't, because I mean, honestly, he didn't deserve what I put him through, but he stuck it out. And I mean, we were able to rebuild. We had to rebuild from nothing. I mean,
y'all have faith.
We drove it in the ditch hard, and I mean, really had to start from scratch, but it's humbling, even though we've come a long way. We're trying to buy a house now. We've always wanted to buy a house or build a house, but being in the military, you move around a lot and it's not really feasible when you're not in one place. And, we probably would have done it a lot sooner, but that kind of took a detour. So, that's our next goal. Once we found where we were happy and wanted to be, and we made a home here, it feels right. It's a big step, but I'm like, I want to do this. I want to give our kids the security. I finally feel like I'm at a place where I can settle down somewhere, and that alone feels like a huge accomplishment because it's taken a lot of work because I mean, our life was really just, and we had to pick it up piece by piece to try to get it back on track, from just years of all of the craziness. And it's taken a lot. It's not come easy. It's taken a lot of hard work and sacrifice and stuff like that. But when we do get there and it's going to be so rewarding, because it feels like it's been a family effort, and I'm like, it's going to be really awesome to give our kids this, and to know everything we've been through to make this happen, So, I mean, that's the next step. We took a huge trip out of the country for the first time, just in March. Had never went away. We went away for 2 weeks to a tropical island. Just me and him, which was nuts because it's like we just see each other. You're like, who are you? You work and we got kids, but we really took the time, to go away and celebrate our 20-year anniversary this summer, and never thought we would make it there, And we were like, we really need to go big for this because it's been a lot, we deserve it.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad we did. And so, now on the other side of everything, life is pretty good. I mean, things happen, life's crazy and it has a way of throwing you curveballs, but all in all, over the course of everything that we've been through, we've come a long way in the last 6 years, and I've got a lot to be thankful for, and I feel good about where I'm at, for the first time in a long time, feel stable and feel like we're where we're supposed to be. Life is good. I'm surrounded by good people. And, I found the company I keep has a lot to do with overall how I'm doing. I feel like I try to fix other people. And so I can't have people around me that are just a hot mess. So I have to put myself in the right community of people, but I'm grateful for the community that I do have. And I'm finally grateful that I'm comfortable enough in my own skin to embrace this part of my life, and be honest enough about it, because I could close up, be ashamed of it or whatever, but it's still part of me, so if it can help somebody or even make them just not feel alone, then it's worth sharing, because
absolutely,
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Yes.
I love you.
I love you.
Yes.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm proud of you. She has no idea how proud I am of her.
I know
Yes.
you, girl.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing, because that is the point of the D Hope podcast.
Yes.
We really do want to help to decrease the stigma, and help let people hear the backstory, because often all people are looking at is the behavior of addiction. They're not thinking about, well, what happened,
led to that.
That led to that. And so that's what we really want
the
to
cause
do.
and effect of it.
Yeah.
Because nobody wakes up and is like, I'm just going to wake up and
I'm
throw
going to
my
just
life
burn
away
my whole life down
and
in
just be
one
a
day.
raging addict. I found, because I watch a lot of podcasts, I follow a lot of people in recovery, and it's been really enlightening, because I think about it completely differently since I've done that. And I like hearing how this happened, who they were, not just what was going on at their worst.
Then.
Everybody has a story, and I learned something from each person that I watch or talk to, and I feel like I come out better on the other side of it, so
you can learn a lot from other people by hearing their story.
And having just the empathy to understand that we're all just doing our best,
like we're all just trying to make
we're all in this together, and I mean, I think, having the ability to be open to people, and not be judgmental, and be like, hey, I see you past the worst of what you've done, and I want to know everything about you, I think it's great, and I was so excited to come on, and I'm so excited to see where it goes, and it's been awesome.
Well, we definitely appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
again for your honesty, for your openness, and it's gonna help somebody.
I feel good.
I know it
I
will.
feel good about that, definitely. I feel really good about it, and if it does, that's going to fill my cup up hugely.
I definitely will.
It will. For absolutely.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Yes.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.